Good morning. Hello, everyone. Welcome to
Jeffrey.
Yes, hi. Welcome to the Future of Greentech. Are we online with the team or just the panelists? Okay, great. I'm Jeffrey Young, your chair for the day. Looking forward to a super exciting day. We've got some great speakers who are leaders in their fields. Future of Greentech is organized by the Camden Clean Air initiative. It's a non-profit action group aiming to reduce pollution, improve air quality, and raise awareness in general for sustainability initiatives, not only in our borough of Camden, but also to be a catalyst for change in the broader need that we all know there is there now, to create a better, more livable planet. In addition to this event and our community activities, which we're really proud of, Camden Clean Air also produces Racing Green, a forward-thinking podcast, highlighting the biggest issues of the day, but also pioneering innovative solutions in the race to a greener world. So we'll give you more about that a little bit later. Georgina will be on the line to talk about that. So following on from earlier events on cities, dwellings, and clean transport, today's topic is about the very, very important topic and theme of sustainability in our food and beverage sector. We want to make this a really, really free-flowing day, interactive experience for everyone. Encourage people to take questions, to ask questions and provide your thoughts and inputs. This is a day of debate, and we really need this audience participation. So also just noting this event is going to be recorded so we can make the content available on the Camden Clean Air website, but also on the social media channels and get the good word out to a lot more people. I now have the pleasure of introducing our first speaker of the day, Julian Hunt, who's the VP for Public Affairs and Sustainability for Coca-Cola, GB, Norway, and Sweden. Julian's going to talk about Coca-Cola's net zero sustainable strategy and also the steps they're taking on packaging, recycling, as well as energy and refrigeration. Over to you, Julian.
Thanks very much, Jeffrey. And if the host could allow me to share my screen, I will just put a few slides up and just say it's great to be with everybody today, just to share a little bit of our work here at Coca-Cola, and specifically the company I work for, Coca-Cola Euro Pacific Partners. Bear with me, people. I will just do this now. So first thing I'll just very quickly do, because it can sometimes be a bit unusual. Not many people know that Coca-Cola is itself a franchise business model around the world. And you have the Coca-Cola company working with bottling partners, such as my business, which is Coca-Cola Euro Pacific Partners. And we are the bottling franchise partner for Western Europe. And since the middle of this year, we also have a footprint in Australasia as well. And as you can see from some of the stats here, which I'm not going to go through, we're a big business with a big footprint. And here in Great Britain, we're equally a big business with a footprint across the country. So we have manufacturing sites in East Kilbride, Morpeth, Wakefield, and 2 in the Greater London area. We have an engineering centre looking after our cold drinks equipment off fridges, typically in Milton Keynes, and we have a small office for customer logistics in Nottingham. So we're a business with a footprint across the whole of Great Britain. We serve about nearly 300,000 different outlets. That's big supermarkets, that's food to go outlets, that's corner shops, that's cafes, that's restaurants. And roughly 55% of our sales come from what we call the home channel. So that's typically your supermarkets, and the rest comes from on-the-go consumption as well in our business. Most of what we sell, we make actually in Great Britain. We're a very local business, and we've been investing a lot in our business here, about £700 million over the past 10 years or so. So as a business, we're focused on great beverages, as you'd expect, delivering great service to our customers, and creating a place for great people to build their careers. And we want to do everything in a sustainable way for a better shared future. And that's not just a load of words. Underpinning that is our sustainability action plan, which is captured here on these slides. We focus on 6 areas where we think as a business we have a responsibility and where we think we can make the biggest difference. And we'll talk a little bit today around what we're doing on climate, packaging and water, but we're also doing a lot of work around the choices we offer, the sugar that we provide in our drinks, and our portfolio generally. We're very focused on being a good neighbour in the communities where we operate, and we also do a lot of work up and down our supply chain to make sure we source everything in a sustainable and responsible way. As Jeffrey said, the food and drink industry is in the spotlight when we talk about the debates around climate. Recently, WRAP, which is a big best practice body that we're a member of, did a new report saying that about 1/3 of total UK emissions come from the production and consumption of our food and drink. And there's been an absolute reduction of about 8%, according to WRAP, over 2015 to 2019. And with its new court-old 2030 commitment, it's working across the total industry to get a 50% reduction in those emissions by 2030. So, I just share those stats with you really to make the point that we recognise, as do many in the food and drink sector, that we have a really critical role to play to address the current climate crisis. And that's why, as a business, about a year ago, we updated our action on climate commitments. And we set out an ambition to become a net zero business by 2040, with an interim goal to reduce our carbon footprint and our greenhouse gas emissions by 30% by 2030. We also, we're not the only company to do this, but it's still a pretty unique thing, but we've integrated a carbon reduction metric into our long-term incentive plan so that all our senior leaders in the business are focused on what we need to do to deliver our carbon reduction targets. And finally, and I'll talk about this a little bit more detail, really focused on collaborating and working very closely with our suppliers to start to deliver our ambitions. And it's not just businesses that are really worried about what's happening right now. There's lots of data we see. This is just one of many charts that show that climate change is high on people's worry list, as it rightly should be. And interestingly, a recent Kantar study was published that said the things that concern consumers the most, and this is a global study, are climate change, water pollution, and then other issues, including plastic waste. And in that study, I found it really interesting from a business perspective that 2/3 of shoppers that they talked to said they have switched to comparable products that have a positive impact on the environment. 93% say they're paying much more attention to the sustainable and sustainability information that's on packaging, including recycling information. And half of the shoppers they spoke to in that study said that sustainability is now more important for them than ever before. So, we know as a business that we're concerned with this, and we know that our consumers increasingly are worried about what's happening and want to see action. So that's why, as I say, about a year ago, we launched our new net zero climate commitments, focusing on 2040, but with, as I say, this interim stage of 2030. And this is our kind of pathway to get to net zero. It's targets that have been endorsed by the Science Based Targets Initiative, which we think is really important to have that validation that our plan is workable and fits with the science and fits with the need to get to that 1.5 degree pathway as set out in Paris. And importantly, just on this slide, just want to point out that as we look at our targets, the first thing that we're very clear we're trying to do, certainly in this interim step, this next 10 years, is we're looking to reduce our emissions from our operations and across our value chain first, before we look at carbon credits or offsetting like that. So the primary focus for us is what do we need to do to reduce rather than offset, and I think that's quite important. And for many years we've been measuring our greenhouse gas emissions and our carbon footprint, but looking at it from a value chain perspective. So we've always measured across every aspect of our business. And you'll see from here, our actual physical operations, relatively speaking, are a small part of our overall total carbon footprint. And actually, it's packaging where we have the biggest opportunity to reduce our carbon emissions. And the other thing to point out, again, is that as we think of where those emissions come from, it is the indirect emissions. It's our scope 3 emissions where we think we have the biggest opportunities to make reductions. It's over 90% of our emissions come from scope 3, which is why, as I say, it's critical that we're working very, very closely with our suppliers. And our scope 2 are very small, and that's partly because for many years as a business, we've been purchasing all of our electricity from 100% renewable sources, not just here in GB, but across our businesses in Europe. So this is a little bit of a kind of action plan. These are the areas that we are going to be focusing on to help reduce our emissions in the next 10 years. And it is every aspect of our business. It is looking at how we work on our ingredients and what we source. It is about our packaging, and I'll come to that in a bit more detail in a moment. Even though, as I say, manufacturing is a relatively small part of the total footprint, that doesn't mean we're not going to keep working to reduce the carbon emissions associated with our sites, and also transport. Here in GB, we use a lot of third-party hauliers, so it's working very collaboratively with them. And as we mentioned, the equipment that we put on the market is a critical role to play. And for us, that's about constantly ensuring that we've got the most efficient, the best-in-class kit out there on the market. And if I just give you some examples of some of the things we're looking at within our manufacturing sites, all of the forklifts that we use, all of the diesel shunting units we use to move loads around the sites, we're switching them over to become electric. And you might think that's almost a so what, but that measure alone, which is a big change at the sites, that will give us almost 1% of the carbon reduction we need here in the UK. So it's the small things, and it's also the big things. A switch to 100% rPET, we think, will give us about 11% of that total reduction. And turning to the coolers again, as we roll out a program to really replace older kit in the market with the best-in-class units, that's going to give us 6.5% of the total reduction. So all of these individual actions, mount up and are critical. And as you can see, I'm not going to go through everything on the list here. There is a lot of work underway within our business to identify what we can do to reduce our total greenhouse gas emissions and carbon footprint. I mentioned as well that it is about engaging suppliers. I mean, it is absolutely critical. We're not going to achieve our ambitions without their support and their partnership. And for our bigger, more strategic suppliers, we're having lots of constructive discussions with them now, because they basically account for about 90% of those scope 3 emissions. So we're asking them to come on the same journey as us, set their own science-based emissions reduction targets, and we'll work with them and help them on that. We're asking that they also switch within their businesses to using energy from 100% renewable sources as well. And then increasingly working with them to get them to share their carbon footprint data with us, so that we can get an even better insight to our total footprint and the impact of the work that we're doing. But it's not just suppliers, it's also how can we help our customers in the trade. One example of an initiative that we will be formally launching at COP26 conference up in Glasgow in a couple of weeks is the work we're doing with Net Zero Now, Pernod Ricard and the Sustainable Restaurants Association to develop what we're calling the Net Zero protocols for pubs, for bars and for restaurants. And the idea here is really to address one of the issues that we can certainly see, that for smaller businesses, the whole conversation about net zero can be confusing, it can be quite intimidating as well. We did a piece of research with a number of about 350 of our customers, smaller customers in the pub trade, and you can see, some of those concerns come through. About 1 in 5 said they really were aware of what net zero meant, and how it impacted their organization. You know, many said there were barriers to achieving change. You know, the clarity in particular was a big concern. But you know, for almost more than 3/4 of those that responded to the survey said that they saw, not a surprise, climate change as a high priority for their businesses. So we think this is a really exciting initiative, as I say, rolls out from next month, working with all of our customers, particularly our smaller customers, to give them a tool that will allow their net zero journey. And it's simple, practical help that it gives. It helps them focus on the electricity that they use. What kind of tariffs are they on, for instance? Because that can be about 10 to 12% of total emissions in many of these outlets. It's about focusing them on energy best practice. So making sure that that they're really focusing in on how they use the energy that they buy, and also getting them to think about some of the kind of more sensitive topics, like the kind of food that they offer in their outlets. Meat, for instance, can contribute quite a high amount to an outlet's emissions if it's a food-led outlet. So back to packaging, I mentioned it's about 43% of our carbon footprint here in Europe. Is slightly higher actually in GB. That's why we've put so much focus on our sustainable packaging strategy, and I'm delighted that Michael's going to follow me afterwards, because I know our business has also been working with his company on some exciting innovations, which are a key part of what we're trying to do. But for us, the strategy focuses on removing unnecessary plastic, the packaging that we use. It is about this journey to replace virgin plastic with plastic that's either from renewable sources or recycled. It is about supporting recycling recovery systems so that we can get back all the packaging we put on the market. And as we look across Europe, it's about what innovations can we do in the refill, reuse and dispensed areas to change the packaging footprint of our business. And you know, we're making good progress here in Great Britain, but there is a lot more to do, particularly around I think the recycling rates, and that is linked inevitably to recovery rates. Big policy discussions underway right across Great Britain at the moment about how to change the packaging recovery systems in this country. And key to that is the introduction of deposit return schemes. We're a big advocate of that. We think the experience we have, particularly in Northern Europe, but around the world, is that when they're well designed and well implemented, DRS schemes can make a massive difference, both to the amount of packaging that's recovered for recycling, but also the quality of what's collected, making it easier for it to be recycled back into new food grade packaging as well. So we've got regulation in Scotland, we've got regulation coming, we think, in England and Wales. I think our big concern and our big ask of policymakers is that we have complementary systems developed across Great Britain. We don't want to see a different type of DRS in Scotland to one in England to one in Wales. So a lot of conversations to make sure we have one common system across Great Britain, because we think that will make a huge difference to the recovery and recycling of packaging. And as I said, we've made a commitment to move towards 100% rPET for all of the plastic bottles we put on the market. We announced recently that here in GB, and that work starts literally from this month, we're switching for our smaller PET bottles, we're switching them to 100% rPET, and we're continuing to work on moving the rest from 50% to 100% as quickly as we can. I have to say, the challenge is the availability of good quality food grade recycled PET at the moment, which is back to the conversations we're having with policymakers about improving the recovery systems here in Great Britain. These things are inextricably linked. And rPET and packaging isn't kind of new for us. I mean, we've been trying to shape things for the better for many years here in Great Britain. It started in 2012 when we partnered with a reprocessor up in Lincolnshire to build the UK's first bottle-to-bottle reprocessing plant, and that's still where we source the bulk of our rPET here in Great Britain. And in 2012, we made the move to 25% rPET, one of the first big FMCG companies to make that switch. And since then, we've continued to innovate around our packaging which, as I said, culminates in recently the move to 100% rPET in our small packs. And also at a kind of corporate level, continuing to look at new technologies and the role they might be able to play in the future. And you've probably heard a lot about depolymerization technologies. We're supporting two interesting startup companies that are looking at this technology. And that can take poorer quality waste materials, plastics materials, and break it back down to its component parts. So you can actually build back good quality, high quality plastics that can be used in food applications. I have to say early days, but really interesting. And the little bottle with the blue label was just a proof of concept we did 2 or 3 years ago to show that you could take marine plastics waste, put it through one of these processes, and you could incorporate it in a soft drinks bottle, and it had the same quality and the same performance that you would expect. So to bring things to a close, hopefully on time for you, Jeffrey, all of us on this call, all of us in business recognise that the world is at a critical point. We're hoping to see governments and commit to further action to tackle the climate crisis. From our perspective, we've set out a strategy, a plan to become net zero by 2040. We're investing a lot of money right now to help us on that journey. So 250 million euros across our business here in Europe. It is about action across the total value chain. It's not just our factories or our core business. It's about what do we do across our value chain. And collaboration is going to be absolutely critical for us to deliver against our ambitions. And that means working very closely with our strategic suppliers to deliver change. So thanks for listening. I've rattled through a heck of a lot in 20 minutes. I would recommend, if you want to learn more, just go to our website. There's tons of information on there that you can download and read and to get a better feel for what we're doing. But thanks ever so much for listening. And Jeffrey, I'm going to stop sharing and hand back to you.
Great. Well, thanks, Julie. That was really interesting. What I was just really in awe of is the actual scale of the problem that you face as a business, but also incredible the discipline that you're putting in place and the seriousness of which a company like yours absolutely takes this. It really underlines the massive issue we have ahead of us, but great to see a company like yours really leading the way. I think that's really incredible. Now we're going to have lots of Q&A in the panel session, so I think we're starting to get some questions. We would love you in the audience there to share your questions in the Q&A, and we'll come to those questions in the panel session, which is going to follow the next speaker. So again, thank you, Julian, for joining us, and let's move on to the our next speaker, who is Michael Michelson, Commercial Manager at Paboco. Now, Paboco, I'm told, is short for the Paper Bottle Company, Denmark-based, aiming to change the bottles industry for good. You're going to talk about, I believe, the latest technology and designing full value systems. I look forward to hearing about what are full value systems, and yeah, so absolutely welcome, Michael.
Thank you so much, Jeffrey, and it's an absolute pleasure to be here, and pleasure to hear also from you, Julian, about the scope of what the industry is facing in terms of coming to new initiatives, setting ambitious targets, and looking across wide systems to how to achieve those targets. Now, I of course can't speak in any way as a representative on behalf of that. We are an innovation company. We are working across the industry sector to develop new types of packaging. So what I wanted to bring to you today is perhaps a look into what the future could bring and what we're trying to achieve here out of Denmark with the support of major organizations like the Coca-Cola company, who's part of our innovation group, our community as we call it, but also just what does the technology take to make it realizable, implementable, and hopefully as soon as we can. And let's see, I would also try and just share my screen here. Hopefully that should come up right about now. And it seems that there are Some nodding heads here. So yeah, Jeffrey, you mentioned it right, quite right. I'm gonna be calling myself Paboco, but it's actually an abbreviation. We stand for the Paper Bottle Company, and that's all we do. We are a company focused on technology development, product development, and production. And our only product is the paper bottle, because we believe that if we want to make an impact, we need to have focus as well. Just a quick background, because Paboco definitely does not have the name recognition of someone like the Coca-Cola company. So exclusively, we do have partner sites in Sweden and Austria as well. But we're founded on a very simple principle in actuality, and that is that Paboco has decided to become a part of a solution for a sustainable future. I think reflecting on what you just presented to us, Julian, the scope of what we're facing here is quite wide. We do not claim, and nor do we target to be a silver catch-all bullet, but we want to at least be part of what can be done within the packaging sphere that could help move us towards this future that we're seeking. And our approach to that is actually quite simple. We don't do it alone. We work with partners to make this a reality, and we can see them right here on screen. We decided in 2019 to establish a community that could work across industry sectors, across brands, across categories, to implement paper bottles into the consumer world as quick as possible and as quick as technology progress allows it to be as well. And what we see here are our four major partners. The Ades brand, representing the work we've done so far with Coca-Cola. We recently had a very small trial within the Hungarian market, which we're very happy to see consumers being able to provide real-time feedback as we develop in parallel. Because keep in mind, this is not a finished product, but something that we're co-developing as we're introducing it to consumers as well. And this type of new innovation management and willingness of partners like those of our pioneer community is so critical that we design and we develop for a future and a reality that we're actually facing. And this goes across many different stops on that road. I mean, we are the backbone of creating a paper bottle, but it needs to go through many different systems and many different logistics. And at the end of the day, into the hand of a consumer who will also accept the bottle, into their lives and into the experience that is drinking, or in the case, of course, of L'Oreal, whose partner using it in their daily lives. In addition to that, we are actually supported by two industry members from the packaging world. Might not be well known to those outside packaging specifically, but BillerudKorsnäs is a major Swedish supplier of forestry-based packaging, and Alpla, a global player in terms of plastics packaging manufacturing, also in recent years shifting a lot of attention towards recycled PET manufacturing and providing packaging solution, again, across wide industry sectors. It's very interesting to work in this kind of joint venture setup, because it means that we don't have to work on principles that are already well in place. Our focus as a innovation-based company is really to look into the future that might be a year, 3 or 5 years from now, and try and target as close as we can get to what we think is going to be what the world would also need at that point. We have great support in our parents, as we like to call them. Our BillerudKorsnäs parents are experts on paper. They're also experts on responsibly sourcing paper. That means we are not emphasizing a strain on the world's resources. Rather, we're actually trying to distribute a use of resources in a way that we can keep forestry areas and wildlife well in place. And to couple that with our parent at Alpla, who is a global manufacturer of already packaging systems, well, that helps us understand the scope and the scale of the world that we're preparing for. The paper bottle company then stands as the technology provider, the product developer, and the producer of paper bottles. That means we're the one-stop shop for paper bottles, but we also have centralized knowledge together with our community partners here. And I want to rest a moment on the community partners, actually, because this way of working is quite new to the industry. We've been able and fortunate enough to find partners that have an idealized vision and strong strategic objectives. I think, Julian, you can speak to that definitely from what we just seen. But in addition, we've also found partners who are willing to collaborate broader than just within their own industry sector. And this has helped achieve goals within our project that have been expedited far quicker than we had initially hoped to see, such as implementation of paper bottles or cross-sector learnings as well. Something that's really key in these situations when we're working within the field of innovation, because this is definitely for us still a journey. And across that journey, there will be learnings and there will be iterations. But the more we can share journey results, the quicker we can come to a final version of the bottle that we want to see. And our approach here is actually quite focused on the long-term future. We need to couple a world where we can see that the technology push that we can provide in terms of new materials or new technology, of which we are one of many, but definitely an industry expert provider, needs to have the vision of a 3 to 10 year horizon. But the 3 to 10 year horizon comes from working partnerships. It comes from having engagement with companies that have also had a 10-year history within their own sector and can see how the leverage of this technology can be put to greater effect. So this is where we try to couple our scope of leading brands and try to segment out a field within the world where we would see the paper bottle introduced quite quickly, not just through the levels of innovation that are current, which we are already working on today, which is trying to extend the technologies that we have in place for wider use, but build it really to this level of game-changing innovation where we might need to rethink some systems that we have taken for granted today, or even some consumer interactions. But taking the stepwise generational journey approach is what makes this realizable and implementable. If we go straight from game-changing innovation, that is admirable, but to create a true impact at volume, we need to take a stepwise direct journey to approach here. And for us, that means developing more than one bottle. It actually means developing 3 different ones. But in all of this development, our vision is crystal clear. What we need to do to shift more to a paper-based future is to create something, first of all, that's fully bio-based and that's fully recyclable within the paper recycling systems, who are already today optimized for paper products, and would also consider different types of closure solutions. Because again, if we focus on just one stage of the value chain, we miss out on the grander picture, such as decoration, closures, or interaction between bottle and consumer. And today we've taken an approach that bounds itself in the technology availability that we have. So we start at a generation 1, which very simply utilizes Paboco's methods of creating paper bottles with the industry methods of making those bottles consumer and product safe, using a recycled PET barrier on the inside as an interim step to introduce paper bottles to the wider community, gather learnings, and develop for the future. At the same point in time, because the paper is such a naturally strong material, we can actually reduce the reliance on non-paper materials within the generation 1 paper bottle. And this is in terms of industry standards, such as lightweighting. Already for generation 2, we're looking to shift that to a fully bio-based system where we use similar technology platforms, but we simply do an investigation into new material bases to create this more fully bio-based composite that we're looking to see also in other venues of industry. But for us, the definite breakthrough, which we've been able to see early prototypes already within current and next year, is the generation 3, as we call it. And you can see it here on screen, and the difference between the two is quite noticeable. Where you in the first generation, of course, have a neck that's non-paper based and therefore use non-paper based closures. Well, in the generation 3, we suddenly have something that's fully paper adopted, still has a barrier to, of course, keep the product and the consumer safe during the consumption process, but can enter into the paper recycling stream fully and adoptively. For us, this is a clear goal that's been set forward, and this is what we'll be looking to introduce at volume within the coming years. And I won't break down every single stage of a value chain that we need to go through, but what I can definitely say is that when you work with a community approach and you have a clear set defined Generation 3 paper bottle target? Well, you can start to work more flexibly across the systems that you have today. For example, we have many innovation teams and developers working directly with market launch planning, not because we want to give the indication that we are yet at a full volume scale, but you cannot develop something like this in a vacuum. There's simply a point in time where we design ourselves at a desk and we cannot progress further without exposing these bottles to reality. So this is what we're doing now. And this is why it's such a great feeling for us to have the support of the full community and getting this into the consumers that is well known by the brands and getting the feedback directly so we can keep improving and we can keep developing on the bottles that we already have. The Generation 1 is our stepping stone for that, so that we can advance quicker and scale to make a real industry impact with a new initiative like this. Likewise, we also see ourselves as facilitators of change for the industry as a whole, and that includes something like production sites. Take the good example of a filling line. If you have a filling line system where you would usually introduce a glass bottle, well, that might need to have some changes for a more malleable material like paper. Now, paper is strong, and we want to conform to the systems that we have today, but it's these early stages of learning and this product development journey that allows us to prepare to introduce it at scale. Something that for Paboco is a target already for 2022. So we definitely also put our production capability where our ambitions and our visions are. And lastly, it's important for us to remember that while we innovate in boundless leaps by trying to introduce a new type of packaging into the industry, it's so critically key importance for us to work in increments, gather learnings, and make sure that every step we take on this journey is one in the right direction. Not just to the purpose of functionality, of course, but to the purpose of sustainable, lasting improvement for the industry, and not just an innovation cycle that will, in a decade from now, be forgotten. So this is our support to working with the community and our overall approach. And I want to spend just the final few minutes here to release the rest of my time in talking about how we've already come far, but when working with an innovation and sustainability landscape, we can never really stop our improvement. We can never say that we have reached a goal which will be the end state. So we're taking a challenge upon ourselves, and we've taken 8 of them at the same time. These 8 challenges are what we believe makes a project and a product not just impactful, but long-lasting. Sustainable barriers that I've already spoken to some effect. It's making sure that it can be recycled. It's making sure that it's also sourced sustainably and be safe for the consumer. And a scalable production process is as very simple as making an impact is never done with a niche product. It needs to be done at scaling of the industry to make sure that we actually create an impact for the future of packaging. We're also looking at things like digital direct printing and high pressure resistance to allow us to enter into a wider category of products. Digital direct printing is a way of us to communicate as a packaging producer directly with the consumer and inform them about different changes for a paper bottle, how to recycle, how to enact with something as simply as say, recycle in paper stream. People might be used to a bottle going into some place different. And high pressure resistance is simply a feature of paper that we want to make sure we keep. So we build it into carbonated beverages as well. On the other side, we can see things that are traditionally associated with a bottle that is equally important to keep in mind when carrying forward these development projects. Sustainable closures. If you have a future bottle of paper, why not start working on a paper cap as well? Something that can enter a joint recycling system. Especially informative because we know that the European Union in the future would like to have caps directly tied to the bottles, the tethered cap approach. And the last part are more directly focused on technology, equally important to support this journey, but of course something that we keep improving continuously. And that's our paper mixture, its origin, its function, it's our way of shaping bottles. You saw the examples earlier for our entire community, these are actually coming from one singular technology platform. So we know that we have the ability to create unique designs. And then mobile connectivity as a link within digital printing to keep us relevant in the consumer sphere. And a final word is that paper bottles, while they might seem novel, is definitely not something that is only being developed by Paboco. We've seen within the recent 4 years of the industry a lot of initiatives to this effect. There is definitely a push towards paperification within the packaging industry as a whole. Carton board and carton-shaped packaging has long been the only solution within this, but there are many initiatives now coming with great suggestions on what sectors to approach and how to make something that fits into the paper recycling systems and the consumer world as well. I won't go through all of these, but this is just to give you an idea of the level of interest and effort that's being put to this, as well as some trends within bioplastics, of course. Lastly, I'll just once again note that Paboco is a Danish-based company, but with a lot of support from our parents, but even more support for the willingness and the forward thinking of the brands that we work with. While we enable the technology and the paper bottle creation process, it is the collaboration across entire value systems, even recycling, filling, labeling, and distribution to clients that makes the paper bottle a reality. And let's not forget that there are many development partners that are usually required in this kind of approach. So our community is definitely a new way of taking packaging development into an effect. So with that, Jeffrey, I think a bit earlier ahead of time, but maybe that allows for a few more questions. I'm surely happy to answer any that people might have on paper bottles or packaging industry overall.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Michael. That was fascinating. That glimpse into the future, and I love that term, paperification. I've got a quick question for you before we go to the actual discussion panel, and we'll have some great questions from the audience. But with this paperification, are we at risk of actually deforestation?
That's a really good point, and it's something that we've been critically aware of, right? We want to make an impact at scale, like I mentioned, and of course that means that we need to be respectful of the resources that we have available to us, not just for the industry, but also as people and as caretakers of the next generation. We've worked very closely with the organization known as the Forest Stewardship Council, or FSC for short, which really makes an effort to ensure that deforestation and trying to alleviate pressure on the world's forests when we source this type of material. By working only with FSC grade material, we actually ensure that whenever a tree is used as a material at the prime time during its lifespan, whenever a tree gets old, it will actually start to decay ever so slowly. This is usually when we try to use trees for other things such as packaging or printing materials. And then new forest areas are also replanted, and an area is never cleared totally. So by working with FSC-based materials, we actually avoid the risk of deforestation or work actively to try and avoid it, and can ensure that there are healthy, naturally regenerating areas of forest around the world.
Fantastic. Right. Well, super exciting. Thank you very much, Michael. Now we're going to move to the panel session. We've got some great questions there in the Q&A, which I'm just going to access now. Keep coming, guys. We've got I can see 5 comments and questions there. We've got one from Jay Stolt. It's for Julian, and it's will OEMs have to produce their bottling machines in a climate neutral way in the future? And will the supply chain be climate neutral, and in which time frame?
Yes, so as I was saying in the presentation, we're asking all our suppliers to come on the same sort of journey that we're on. So to set a carbon neutral plan strategy for their businesses, do it science-based using the SBTi protocols, and to have that in place by 2023. But I think it's fair to say that we're focusing primarily on the 100 what we call strategic partners to begin with, because they have the biggest impact on our value chain. So we'll be working very closely with those companies over the next couple of years. But you know, it's an opportunity for everybody. I think supplying into not just our business, but the Coca-Cola system generally, to really start to think about this. I have to say, we did a big event for our suppliers beginning of the year. And as part of that, we sent out a little survey, and it was really reassuring that from memory, I think it was about 2/3 either had or were putting into place net zero strategies using the SBTi protocols as well. So there's a lot of work happening, I think, right across the value chain in the food and drink sector.
Right. There's another question here from Ju Ching, and this is for Michael. Would you like to take that question? Is there the shelf life of Paboco paper bottles?
Right. Yes, of course. I think any packaging product and producer needs to be aware of shelf life, right? There is definitely a shelf life on a Paboco paper bottle. I can state already up front that it will not start to decompose on the shelf. Not to worry. You won't have any product spilling over the shelf while you're trying to shop. It is a stable packaging format, of course, but it is paper-based. We're also working with minimal barriers, really, when we come to paper bottles, because we want to eliminate as much non-paper material as possible. So we try to reach shelf lives, and we do testing with our co-development partners to make sure that they can survive the journey through a full supply chain system and be on shelf and be used by consumers in a timely fashion. But the shelf life of a paper bottle will be shorter than something more traditional compared to, let's say, a glass container, for instance. There's simply more material between the surrounding world and the product inside, but the paper bottle will definitely keep.
Great. Okay, there's another question here. Let me go through. It's also for someone without a mic. Right, can Michael expand on the barrier film in bottles?
Yes, definitely. And this is the one that we are always very happy to answer, because this definitely leads into this idea of developing and introducing packaging in parallel. The barrier film within a Generation 3 bottle, we can't really consider a film. It is more of a paper bottle with a function built into the paper instead. This is where we're working with bio-based systems that can be recycled definitely directly into a paper stream. In the Generation 1, you are absolutely correct. I think Doug was the one to pose the question. We're using more of a film, a recycled PET material. And this is simply due to two factors: technology availability and the need for consistent and immediate introduction to consumers. So here you do have a composite material. It can still be sorted and it can still be separated, although it does require, of course, some more effort. But we're trying to work closely with recyclers. Again, here we need to, of course, have the bottle in the hands of consumers first to make sure we have something to recycle, to make sure that this is also handled responsibly as well. Hopefully, Doug, that came to the heart of your question.
Yeah, and just on that point, you know, just the question that Doug has on the short time frame. You know, does it have a short time frame? The pulp, the storage time.
Pulp itself, yes, to some extent. We work with raw material on our site, and the pulp is prepared just before and immediately before production. So we run sort of a just-in-time manufacturing setup, making sure that we don't have pulp stored for long. This is simply due to technical and, of course, good manufacturing practices considerations, both.
Great. I'm going to try and do something very highly technical here, which Carlo Andrew Trinidad, I'm going to hand over to him to answer the question.
Hi, good day. So my question is, what is the difference in the energy consumption of producing the paper bottles compared to the plastic bottles? And what is the technology being used to produce those paper bottles of Paboco? Thank you very much.
Thanks, Carlo. I think I better take that one as well. The technology behind the production of the paper bottle is actually proprietarily developed by Paboco. So breaking it down to two very simple components, we take paper, mix it with water, then we use our proprietary shaping and manufacturing technology, but we in essence re-dry the paper to make a stable and strong bottle. So those are the two very simple means of manufacturing. Now, my engineering team would probably have a much longer and much better explanation than this. In terms of the energy consumption, well, that's a key point in our development and one that we continuously track through life cycle assessment and together with our pioneer partners. We believe that already today we have a very good comparative footprint to more traditional packaging types, such as polymer-based packaging and glass-based packaging, for example. But of course, it is worthwhile remembering that we're operating yet at a pilot stage while the industry is operating at industrial stage. So we see a lot of room for potential improvement simply by scaling.
Great. We've got a question here from Chris for Julian. Chris, just need to unmute yourself.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, Julian, you mentioned briefly in your presentation reuse and refill as being on the roadmap. I was wondering if you had any more information on that.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Good question. I did sort of rattle through, as I said, some of the detail. Probably two answers to that question. Firstly, when we look at the beverages that we sell here in Great Britain, about 13% of them are actually from what we call dispense. So they're the taps you might see in a restaurant or possibly a fast food restaurant. So one opportunity for us that we continue to look at is how do we take that well-established dispense technology and our expertise and long history in that area and deliver new opportunities sort of on the go or in the workplace. So that's one area that we're continuing to look at to get a dispense or a package-free, possibly reusable, using reusable cups in the process. And then the second piece is a little bit of a kind of back to the future concept, which is what kind of refillable bottle solution could be used. I have to say we're at very early days here in Great Britain, but we're involved in two really interesting trials that I think are going to help us really get underneath consumer behaviors and understand a bit more what the future might look like in this space. So we're partnering with Asda, one of its eco stores, with a refill system using a glass bottle. So you buy the glass bottle, then you bring it back, put it into a reverse vending machine. You get your deposit back, and then you can go and buy another bottle. And then the second trial we're doing is with Tesco and with a company called Loop, which is a really interesting concept. It's been pioneered in France, and we've been involved in the trials there, and also here with Tesco in GB. They've done an online trial, and it's with a number of producers actually, and we again are providing a refillable glass bottle for that pilot, and that's moved from online into an in-store opportunity. And I think Tesco have got it in something like 10 of their stores now, where they're trialing a number of packaging-free, reduced packaging, free flow products and refill products. So early days. I think Chris is probably the succinct answer to that, but it's an area that we continue to look at, and going forwards, as you saw from the slide, it's going to have to be a part of our sustainable packaging strategy for the future.
Excellent, thank you.
Great. Keep those questions coming, guys. We've got another question from Jay Stolt. It's for Michael. You want to get yourself?
Yep, I'm unmuted. Thanks. Yeah, my question was if the Paboco bottle will be a disposable product, or is it also thinkable that it's going to be a reusable product in a somehow deposit system?
Good point, actually. And here I think I need to reference again the unfortunate newness of our product's introduction, because in the eyes of the European Union, where we're initially launching this, anything that's what's called a paper primary contact material, so something that's close to the food, actually by the European definition can't really be reused as such. So this is why material recycling becomes a key point for us. Until a point where we get go ahead to say, try and reuse and refill, we're focusing more on saying, try to ensure that we reclaim and reuse as much of the material that's actually contained within the packaging. This again also speaks to the necessity of having really strong material recollection and reuse systems in place. So it's good for us to look, while we're innovating, already at the recollection sites that are in place across Europe today. Quite unusual perhaps for companies to start working more widely, but again, a necessity really. So.
Okay, thanks.
Great. Any more questions? There were some absolutely amazing questions. I've just got just another follow-up question there for Michael. When do you think paper bottles are going to be a mainstream product? What's the timeline really?
So for us, the targeted timeline is already next year. But if we're talking mainstream in the terms of you could go into a shop and you'd see paper bottles anywhere, well, our clear definition is by 2025, we want to be a mainstream product. That's no longer innovation. It's simply a choice between the consumer. Would I like my product within one of the more traditional packaging or a paper-based one?
And then it's sort of a tough question for Julian, putting everyone on the spot here. You know, can we, you know, realistically see, you know, Coca-Cola product in paper, you know, sometime in the next few years?
Great question. And I guess we're in the hands of Michael and his colleagues at Paboco on that. But certainly the first trials, as he referenced, that we've been doing was with a dairy product, so not a carbonated beverage, and that was the Ades product that he shared in Hungary. I mean, we're really interested in lots of the innovations coming out. I couldn't say if when Coca-Cola would be in a Paboco bottle by 2025, but you know, as you could see from the presentation, ourselves and a number of other beverage companies are really interested in the opportunity and delighted to be part of that work that's underway here in Europe.
Great. Well, that's been amazing. I'm just going to check if there are any more questions there. I think that's it. Is it in our list? Another one from Jay Stolt.
Yeah, a follow-up question to Michael on the industry. Which impact do you think will such a lightweight paper and non-transparent bottle have for the bottling machine industry and therefore maybe the supplier industry on, I don't know, checking the filling status on bottles and so on?
Very good point, because paper is notoriously hard to make transparent, right? There are actually a couple of research initiatives I can tell you within Sweden working on that, but it's future tech, definitely. For OEMs and working with filling line systems, this is part of our trials right now, seeing how much can we conform to existing systems and how much do existing setups need to conform to us. Fortunately, something like a filling line, there are already systems in place today that look top down into a bottle rather than from the side to evaluate. Some considerations in systems is, of course, wetness. When you're working with paper, it is slightly hydrophobic, but you do need to account for not having it standing in 100% humidity conditions for an extended period of time. And this is where we're also fortunate enough to be working with companies that have a wider range of product portfolios. We're not simply testing for a single venue of introduction, we're testing which OEM systems across different product categories are just a great natural fit for paper bottles. So I would say conclusion-wise, slight adaptation, but we do try to conform to not have to fully break our value chain systems by introducing new packaging.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Well, that's been a really interesting set of talks there. Thank you to Julian and also to Michael for your participation. We really appreciate that. Thanks also to the audience, those who have asked the questions, guys. Excellent questions. We're going to take a short break now, but it'll only be sort of about 12 minutes. We're going to be back here at 11:20, and it's going to be a great topic, because we're going to get closer into the topic of food, and especially one of my favorite topics, which is coffee. So I'm going to take a quick coffee break, but we're going to have some great talks from two wonderful people, very much close to agriculture and also to coffee. So look forward to us all coming back here, and we'll be back at 11:20. Thanks so much. Welcome back to the second session here of the Future of Green Tech, emphasis on food. And so there's no better person here to talk today about this topic. Is our next speaker is Professor Peter Pickle, who's works with John Deere. Peter's going to talk about producing more with less, and also the latest technology on the farm. Welcome, Peter. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah. Thank you, Jeffrey. Good morning to everybody. I'll try to share my screen now. Hope it works. So, yeah, thank you for the introduction, and I will show you some trends in precision arable farming, and I will touch the points that you see on the left corner on my screen, my introduction screen. I'm working in Kaiserslautern in this new building, and we are a group which has the allowance by our company to look a little bit into the future, and I want to give you some ideas. So start with looking at agriculture. What are the grand challenges? Everybody knows that it's providing food security, especially protein security. And on the other side, agriculture is the economic sector which contributes to CO2 emissions and to the climate change. And it is also the first economic sector, the primary economic sector, which is impacted by the climate change. So this means we have to do something. And our community has derived some guiding principles, and the European Association of Agricultural Equipment Manufacturers, the CEMA, created and published the guiding principle for development. We have to produce more with less inputs. And if we look to 2050 or 2060, we have to extend this principle to the principle of independence, which means that we have to become independent from input of limited resources, such as fossil fuels, but also a limited resource is manpower, because we are living in an age of urbanization, and the future there will be a lack of workforce in rural areas. From this, we can derive certain technology needs. And one of the technology needs is that we have to apply sustainable development methods. So we have to look into the future, for example, by doing product lifecycle management, including digital twins in our early development phases. Secondly, we have to apply precise automation and also autonomy. And if you speak about autonomy, is it something we can? Yes, we can, and we can do it. We can, or we could run machines autonomously since about 20 years already. And if you look to ag machines today, and to compare it to the automotive standard SAE J3016, we would say we have achieved autonomy level 3. And the basis is we are guiding our machines along pre-planned paths using satellite navigation systems and using and applying terrestrial correction signals. Doing this and applying the highest level of terrestrial correction signals, which we could call RTK, real-time kinematics, we can achieve accuracies guiding our machines and even fleets of machines up to 2.5 centimeters. So this is what we can do, but we can today not get rid of the driver just for reasons of or legal constraints. So these are reasons of liability. Technologically, we are in a place where we can guide machines autonomously and also machines, fleets of machines autonomously. So this is something we are doing. So we are trying to increase precision of operation in order to apply also inputs like plant protections inputs very precisely to each individual plant. That is something that we want to achieve. I will come back to this aspect several times. The third technology need is we have to apply electrification. Why? There are 4 reasons. The first reason is efficiency. Electric powertrains are highly efficient, so we have to apply electrifications to fulfill the guiding principle of producing more with less. Power density, this might be surprising for you. I will discuss it a little bit later. Power density is extremely high when applying electric drivetrains. The third reason of the 4 that I would want to present is controllability and dynamic response behavior. And my example for controllability and dynamic response behavior is this one. What you see here is a single cone seeding machine applied to a tractor, which places seeds of corn or sugar beet at speeds, working speeds of up to say 16 kph with an accuracy in a row of ±1 centimeter. And this is something we can only achieve because in these sub-devices, the yellow boxes in the back of the tractor, there are each 2 electric servo motors installed, one for the seed singulation and the other one for accelerating the seed when brought down to the soil in opposite direction of the tractor and with the same speed as the tractor has, in order that the seed, when it is laid down on the ground, has a relative speed to the ground of 0 and the seed will not roll. That's done by electric drives, not achievable with hydraulics, mechanical drives, or anything else. And the diagram shows something more. On the lower right corner, you see the tractor driver, the operator. He does not care for his dashboard or steering the machine. He cares for his iPad and managing his farm while his machine is operating. This is the future. So the operator does not care for operating the machine. He just surveils his environment and cares for managing his farm. So we can do it. There's some picture missing. Sorry, I have to skip. If you now where the seeds are lying, you can steer a hoe, a weeder, a mechanical weeder, through the rows and eliminate weeds without using herbicides. That's shown here in this diagram. This can also be done at speeds up to 16 kph. And in order to achieve a higher accuracy, even higher than the satellite systems with RTK kinematics deliver, we need additional cameras. So we can steer with a hydraulic cylinder shown on the left lower corner, the mechanical weeder through the rows. Going back to the slide, we can also do it longitudinal, but also in cross direction, so that we can replace using herbicide by mechanical methods. This is something we can do for corn and sugar beet, not yet for wheat and other small grains, but we are working on it. There's an alternative pathway to doing this mechanical weeding. The alternative pathway is what we see is called see and spray. So on the back of the tractor, you see also a weeder installed on it. There are multiple cameras looking on the soil, identifying plants as weeds or as crops, and the weeds are sprayed on with a minimal input of herbicides. This reduces the application or the used input of herbicides up to 90%. This is the alternative method to doing it with mechanical weeders. By the way, the price that you're paying when going to mechanical weeding is you have to increase fuel input, because any mechanical operation needs energy, and energy means increasing fuel input. Now, coming back to reasons for electrification, the fourth reason is, of course, electrification gives us access to renewable energies. And we tried different pathways for electrification of tractors and of other agricultural machines. One of our first attempts was a fully battery electric tractor, which we showed on a big fair in Paris. And it looked like this. So this was a tractor in our advanced engineering, and on the lower right corner, you see the tractor as we showed it as an exhibit on the fair. And the drivetrain system looked like this. You had on the left side a big battery, two high-power electric machines, and a 12-volt onboard network for supplying controllers, etc., with energy. This concept shows the strength and the weakness of electrification. If you look to the back of the tractor, this is a drivetrain. It's a serial rear axle of a tractor with two electric machines, high power. We achieve here almost 300 kW, so almost 400 horsepower, in a chassis of a 200 horsepower tractor. And if you are aware of tractors, you know that the rear axle carries all functionality that the tractor needs to become a tractor. So the drivetrain is in it, the hydraulics is in it, the PTO, the power takeoff is in it, the three-point linkage. So everything a tractor needs with regard to functionality is here. And so an extreme dense packaging of the tractor functionality. And at the same time, you see the weakness. The weakness of the concept is the battery. If you apply this battery, this big high power, high capacity battery, you can run at full power or full load for an hour or 1.5, much too short with regard to the requirements of a farmer who wants to do his work on a full workday of 8, 10 or 12 hours without recharging or refueling the machine. So this the concept of battery electrification can certainly not apply for bigger tractors, perhaps for small tractors. But we didn't want to stop the development of electrification because we saw the big benefit of power density and also the reason of getting access to renewable electric energy that we thought we have to drive these two very beneficial effects. So we modified the tractor in several steps as shown here in this diagram. At first, we applied the cable drum to the battery electric tractor and the robot arm, which controlled the handling of the cable. And while we operated this machine, we learned that the machine, the cable handling cannot be done by a human operator. It requires much too high accuracy. A man cannot do it. And so we redesigned the concept. We eliminated the tractor driver completely. And the result was our tractor, which we called the grid tractor, the grid connected tractor. And with this concept, powering the machine, not by batteries, but from the field border, we think, and it's a vision going beyond 2030, we think that this vision allows us for improving the machine performance by factor 2, increasing the power density in the same amount, reducing machine costs by 50%. It's just cheaper than applying combustion engines. Operating costs, when you get rid of the driver, you can reduce your operating costs. And whatever you want to have at the field border, you can, of course, apply renewable power coming from windmills, from the grid, from a big battery, from a fuel cell, for whatever you can imagine. And we didn't stop at this point. So we have developed further steps using this concept of cable-driven machines and applying electric power from a cable drum tractor to a fleet of machines, increasing the power, the application power on the field. So this is a concept we showed recently on a fair with a machine here on the right upper corner of the slide. It is a fully autonomous all electric tractors without a primary energy source. So if you consider a tractor as is today, a tractor splits up the application splits the application or diverts the application from drivetrain and energy supply. This machine, the swarm concept as we call it, this makes a second or another splitting. It splits the energy supply from the drivetrain, and the application is connected to the implement in the back. So coming back to this guiding slide, our technology needs that we need to fulfill our guiding principles and challenges is of course smart Internet of Things integration. And this is what we are driving, especially in my location where I'm working. So we are developing a John Deere's Operation Center, which is just, you could call it a farm management system. And this farm management system is embedded or is becoming an embedded part of a cloud. And we split it up. We split this concept up into 3 pillars: machine fleet, operator management, planning and analyzing the farm management. And everything is connected in the cloud. And this diagram here shows how we think in future farm operation could take place. And what you see here is the example for nutrient management. We sample data about the soil condition in the cloud. This is shown in the upper right corner in the cloud. From this, we can derive nutrient demand for the plants from the plants. And this leads us to an application map, which is transferred to the tractor. And in this case, a tractor with a slurry cask in the back. And The slurry cask, by the way, controls the amount of nutrient brought on the field, by a very, a very intelligent operation. So it has in the back a so-called NIRS sensor, near infrared spectrometry sensor, which measures the amount of nutrients, especially nitrogen, in the slurry, and controls the amount of nitrogen brought on the field according to the application map. This is documented and transferred to further steps of operation in farming, like giving or applying inorganic fertilizers. And in the end, and when we harvest, we want to use or apply the same technology NIRS to measure the amount of nutrients coming or put from the soil into the harvest good in order to close the management cycle here, the nutrient cycle. So we measure the proteins harvested, and with this information we can go into the next vegetation period and derive our next management plans. So this is the system, how it looks like. On the left side, so you see the sensor, which is attached to the slurry cask in the yellow box on the top. So everything is going into the cloud, and our John Deere cloud, of course, is not a standalone cloud, but it connects other clouds which are providing other services like weather services, plant growing models, or whatever you can imagine. And due to the fact that we are coming to the end of time, I may skip some slides which put everything in a little, in an abstract way, and I want to summarize. What we think is, what we are going to is what we call agriculture 4.0, an analogy to industry 4.0. And we think it is the integration of the machines into a central farm management is a vertical integration of farming. The connection of farming to other operations along the food value chain. This integration takes place, and this is a vertical integration. And also, as the second aspect of agriculture 4.0 is that we want to treat each plant and, of course, each animal as an individual. This is what I wanted to show you with the example of our single seeder. We want to treat each plant as an individual and give to it what it needs exactly at a minimum level, but to achieve at the same time the highest potential yield. And this is what we are going for, and we are convinced that on this way, applying these technologies, we will one day, and hopefully not too late, achieve what we call fully sustainable agriculture. And when I say fully sustainable, I mean socially, economically, and ecologically. And with this, I want to thank you for your attention, and I'm looking forward to your questions later on in the panel discussion. Thank you very much.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Professor Pickle. That was absolutely fascinating. Amazing to see that precision and also that central idea that each plant or each animal is an individual. I think absolutely incredible and fundamental idea that has certainly opened my eyes to the world of farming and the high tech of farming now. So we're moving now from the farm and just away from the coffee farm into the next step, and it's the coffee roastery. So I'm delighted to have here Mr. Bengt Hagen, who's the production director at Joh Johannson Kaffe in Norway. He's going to be talking about the challenges and the benefits of building a groundbreaking large-scale coffee production facility. I have the pleasure of inviting Bengt and hear from Norway's most sustainable coffee roastery. Welcome, Bengt.
Thank you. It's good to be here, even though we're not, but still. I'm going to share a little bit of our experiences and our ideas behind this thing. There we go. You'll see my screen, I guess. So this is the green coffee roaster in Norway. We're located in a small city south of Oslo called Vestby. And let me just see if I can make this. Yeah. And who are we? We are Joh Johannson Kaffe. We were established in 1866. It's a family-owned company. They started out with what's called imports. So they were selling flour, they were selling sugar, but they were also selling green coffee. At that time, people usually were selling green coffee, and then people were roasting at home. But this developed, and during the years, the business became more and more a coffee roaster. We supply Norwegian customers with quality coffee. Of course we do. This is our, I'm just now tasting our new Christmas blend, which the lab and the cuppers prepared for me today, and it's good this year as well. We have about 50% of the market share in Norway. We share that with some other Norwegian actors, but also we have now international actors in the Norwegian coffee market that has quite a substantial market share. Annually, we produce about 12,000 tons, and that's equivalent to about 50 million bags of coffee each year. And in production, we are about 50 people, and we are about the same in sales. So we are a small company in some sorts and big in others. We have more or less no export. It's as of today, the Norwegian market is plenty for us. I want to show you a little video about the journey that we've been on. We were located in the city center, more or less, of Oslo, right next to the harbor, and that's not the place that has the future for it when it comes to producing coffee. This is the old factory. We handled coffee in bags. We had to transport them by forklift. But the flavor has always been really, really important to us. But we found out we needed to build a new site, and so we did. These are our owners. Guy with the curly hair is actually Mr. Joh Johannson. And we have built this new facility. Now we switch from burlap sacks to containers, and this is our roast manager. Yeah, we started full-time production here in how do I skip this? Oh, we started full-time production at the new site in December, and then we closed the old factory. But why did we move? We've been in the city center of Oslo since 1966, and already back then, as a family-owned company, you are allowed to think ahead. One of our owners said, we must always plan for the future, or plan for infinity, is actually his words. So that's what they did when they built this one as well. On this one, there was on the top part, there was the roasters, and then the coffee fell down through the different production stages using gravity. But now we have to move. The building is getting old, and the ceiling levels are restricting us when it comes to what kind of machinery we can buy. And we were also looking at that we need to do something about the way we affect the climate. So one of the main issues that that we are working with every day is what's in these cups. This is what we sell. We don't sell a product as such. We sell more or less a flavor. We have actually turning out. This is our bag. This is where we meet our customers. We meet our customers in the cup, and for us, it's quality that we need to work with. We need to have quality in the cup itself, that the flavor is there. We need to have quality in the packaging, in the design, and also, of course, in the production, and also in the work that we're actually doing with sustainability. So, what have we done with the new roastery? One of the things that was really, really important for us was to not build it on arable land. Norway has about 3% of its total surface is arable land. So for us, it was a really, really big importance to not build on arable land. And I can attest to it not being arable at all. It was just more or less a bog with some stones here. And there were a lot of, we used a lot of dynamite to actually get it in the shape that we needed. But it was really important for us not to build on arable land. Next up, we have covered more or less the entire building with solar panels. We have 1,280 solar panels producing between 10 and 15% of the electric power that we need. We also have a big flat roof. The building itself has a footprint of about 5,000 square meters, and there's the possibility, and we are prepared to put solar panels on the roof. But if we do that, then there are some specific strange Norwegian regulations. That means that if you overproduce, so if you have an excess of solar power that you need to put back into the grid, you need to pay a fine, which is kind of crazy. So we decided that we should do the facade, so that you don't have to put cladding there. The solar panels are part of the cladding of the surface already. So whatever we need to do, so we don't have to redo later, we do right straight away. But the roof is prepared for about a similar amount of solar panels. We are also BREEAM Excellent certified, which is, for those you don't know, it is a certification of buildings and their climate footprint. So there, we had a clear vision that we wanted to do as much as possible when it came to sustainability, but we were jumping a little bit around. Okay, this is important, that is important. What do we do? Okay, but we needed to find a system, and we found that in BREEAM. With BREEAM, you get checklists, and you get more or less covered everything that you need to do to call yourself or the building itself sustainable. There are different levels. This is the second highest. There's one also called Outstanding. I'm not sure if Outstanding is better than Excellent, but still, that's the way they chose to do it. But as far as we know, we are the only production site that has this certification. There are several others like kindergartens and like office buildings that have this level of certification, but not production. We also use climate-friendly energy sources. Yeah, we already spoke about the solar power. We switched from using propane on the old site to using biogas, locally or produced in Norway at least. Biogas, which is then a part of the shorter CO2 cycle and not the long one that goes through the dinosaurs and the fossil fuels. And we also use green energy. So we buy certificates guaranteeing that the electricity that we buy is actually also from renewable sources, which Norway has a lot of. One of the major things that you'll notice if you come here to visit, or even if you see the pictures, it's all the wood. This entire building, 5,000 square meters in footprint, 9,000 square meters of floors. Everything is built from wood. There are two floors that are built from, there are two floors that are built from concrete, and that's the bottom, the sole of the factory itself. That is low carbon concrete, a lot of reuse of concrete and such. And it's also the floor in the packaging department, because if you don't have, if that's not heavy enough, it will vibrate, and then you don't get the accuracy that you need for the machines. But the rest of it, it's all made out of wood. So the walls, the floors, the ceilings, the layers in between the different levels, and even the roof is all made of wood. As much Norwegian wood as we could, but at the time where we were planning this, some Norwegian, there were no Norwegian suppliers that could do, like we have, I think the longest stretch of roof we have is 22 meters with no support under it. And then we had to go to Austria to find the technology to do that there. We have wood on the floor. So everything that you see here is built from wood. And why did we choose wood? Yeah, it's because it has a lower CO2 footprint than concrete and steel. And it's also, it looks nice. So that's most of it. But we've done a lot of things else as well. But all of these things together has made us capable to cut the CO2 emissions compared to the old factory with 85%. And that's something that we are really, really proud of. And it's real 85%. It's not something that we buy any certificates or that we compensate anywhere else. It's actual CO2 emissions. So we cut down the fossil CO2 emissions with 85%, when we're pretty proud of that. One of the key things that we did, and this is something that actually came from our own colleagues. We had an idea that who better to build a coffee roastery than the ones that are supposed to operate it and have actually operated it for many, many years. So one of the key persons in the project itself was actually a guy that's been with us and managing the roasting for 50 years. And he has been the key person when it comes to coming up with new ideas. One of the ideas was to harvest and to keep as much of use as much of the energy as possible. In a previous plant, we just roasted, and then we took all this warm air, a lot of warm air, and then just let it out over the roof. In this factory, we built an energy central. That means we harvest the energy from the roasting itself, and then we use that energy and send it. We harvest it, put it into an energy central using water as the energy carrier, and then we introduce that back into the process. So one thing we do is we preheat the coffee beans. So before they go into the roaster, they come to about the temperature of 70 to 80 degrees, and that makes it then we can use the reused energy to actually do that, and then we can save on energy to actually do the real roasting from 80 degrees and up to 210, 215, depending on the blend. We also use the same energy to heat the building. And we also have another thing that uses a lot of energy is cooling. We have grinders that grind the coffee. I think that our sales is about 80% ground coffee, and the grinding process demands a lot of cooling. So for that cooling, we actually I think we have 14 energy wells, about 250 meters deep all around the area, and then we pump the cold water from there and to the heaters. And when the water is on its way back, after it's been through the heat, through the grinders and been heating up, we actually extract the energy once more using heat exchangers, and then pump the remaining water back. But that's one thing. We're very proud of what we've done, but we are also quite aware that this is just the first step. We need to work with packaging. Coffee bags is they are a laminate, so it's very difficult to reuse the material. Usually it goes to just energy reconsumption or energy recovery, which means it's burned. So that's something we need to work on. Well, these are hotels for bumblebees, which we actually also have set up already. We need to go backwards in our value chain and look at the transportation and look at what we can do more of what we actually already are doing for the growers. We're part of something called International Coffee Partners, where we, together with actually a lot of our competitors or colleagues from different countries, go out and educate the coffee growers. And I would have to say 95% of our coffee has some kind of certification. And then you go the other way in the value chain, transportation. Our main customer are really also into sustainability, and they have electric trucks. They are working a lot on that. They will build an electric drone, a sea drone, to actually transport goods across the Oslo fjord. And then they are also building a lot of different wholesales and warehouses so that they can transport it directly out to the end customers. So that's it. A short introduction. I could talk about this for days and days and days, but I think I will try to limit myself. This is what it looks like. The building itself is treated with iron oxide to increase the oxidation of the wood so that it turns gray and nice and uniform. We have natural air as much as possible. We have natural ventilation as much as possible. Well, yeah. So that's, yeah, thank you for paying attention. And I'm sorry I can't see you all in the eye because that's much more fun. But this one was also great.
Great. Well, thanks, Bengt. That was incredible. I mean, as someone that's spent a lot of time in the coffee industry and loves the industry, really super exciting to see. I know we had a conversation on the phone a few weeks ago, but to see it in visuals, it's really brought it to light. Absolutely fantastic. So thanks so much. What a vision, and how great for the industry, the coffee industry, to have a pioneer like yourselves doing not in the right thing, but incredible innovation. Likewise, in the farming industry. So we're going to turn to our panel discussion now. We're going to invite yourself and Professor Pickle to join a panel. We've got some questions there in the Q&A. We've got one. This is for Peter. Right. We're going to hand it over to Doug. But oh no, Doug doesn't have a mic, so I'm going to read it out. With the move to ICE to EVs to keep the weight down and lessen the soil compaction, are John Deere looking at capacitors and fuel cells instead of batteries? And a follow-up question there, can lasers be used to provide energy from a stationary point instead of a cable? That's fascinating. And finally, have you considered intertial systems to augment GNSS? A lot of jargon there. We might need that unpacked. But Professor Pickle, I wonder if you can I'll just sort of restate that again. The first one, just to start with the move to ICE to EVs, are you considering looking at capacitors and fuel cells instead of batteries?
So, we are looking at all pathways to replace fossil fuels currently. So batteries are just one way. The cable vision is another way. As I said, very visionary. We also look at, and we have looked at fuel cells. Actually, what I can tell you is that fuel cells, from the technology point of view relating to egg machines, they have a similar problems compared to batteries. So we have a packaging problem. So you can say it's comparable. And but there's another issue about fuel cells. It is the currently poor availability of hydrogen. So we don't see that hydrogen in the next couple of years will be available. If I say about in the next couple of years, I would say until 2030, and perhaps after 2030 it will become realistic to have access in our sector to the amount of hydrogen needed to make this technology reasonably applicable to egg machines. The other question was about inertial measurement system. Yes, each of our GNSS positioning sensors contains also an inertial measurement system. This is integrated in order to increase accuracy and also in order to improve the path following of the machine. So you need it in order to achieve the accuracies that I was talking about, 2.5 centimeters, and even better if you go below this accuracy level, so to 1 centimeter, as shown, we need cameras or other positioning systems.
Doug had a second question there about lasers. Can lasers be used to provide energy from a stationary point?
This is something we have not investigated. So I cannot answer.
Oh well, Doug, you might have something there. This might be absolutely fascinating. And then there was inertial systems to augment, and this a little bit too technical for me. You may have answered already, but have you considered inertial systems to augment the GNSS?
Yes, so it is, as I said, it's integrated in each GNSS receiver. So the inertial system is what you know from your cell phone. The integrated that shows you the tilting of the your cell phone, and if you integrate the signals coming from the inertial measurement system, you can also follow your path. Rockets use it, and your cell phones use it, and also our GNSS receivers use it. In addition to what you said, it's just implemented to augment the positioning services coming from the satellites.
Now, Professor Biggle, I've got another question, and obviously this is more of a commercial. I understand you're an engineer and technical, but the world of farming. I mean, again, this might be a bit of a stereotype because I've learned a lot from you today here, but there must be, a lot of old equipment out there. Is there, is it realistic that all this very fancy, high tech, it could be widespread within, 5 to 10 years, or, are we going to see farmers with, a lot of old equipment for many years to come?
The market penetration of new technologies is certainly very slow in our sector. So the person who asked this question is completely right. If you bring a new technology into the market, it does not spread out quickly. So if you want to reduce CO2 emissions by saving fuels, we would have to go back one step. because there are old machines in the market which are ready for using B100, so pure biodiesel, and this existing fleet could apply renewable fuels extremely fast. Currently, we don't have B100 in the market. It's just going to the diesel as B7. So there's no chance to achieve the CO2 emission reduction goals by fuels until 2030. This is the truth about it. Nevertheless, we have to think about new technologies, and we want to make a step further. One more comment from my side to this question. Fuels is a really important topic, but the application of inorganic nutrients is a much higher, much more important topic, because the CO2 emissions resulting from applying inorganic fertilizers are factor 4 higher than CO2 emissions from fuels, and also in nutrients coming from slurry is a big discussion because of spoiled groundwater. So these are even more important topics compared to the fuels. And if you see if you look at the global emissions of agriculture, global CO2 emissions of agriculture, these are in a dimension of 25 and even some say 30% of global CO2 emissions. Most of it comes from animal farming, so from emissions coming from the animals and also from the slurry of animals.
Right, well, great point. Now, I can't resist a question for Bengt here on the coffee side. What sort of inspiration did you have? I mean, the coffee industry is a very tight-knit industry. Was the inspiration for your remarkable roastery coming from, manufacturing in general, or from, other examples in the coffee industry at all? Where did all that learning and inspiration come from to actually develop this state-of-the-art roastery?
I think it started with our owners, actually. They were really, really early, already in 2012, when they wrote the mandate to do this for us, a massive project. It was also mentioned that it should be as sustainable as possible. And as time moved on, that gradually increased. And I think it's within the company culture, actually, to look for ways to improve, but you need to do it sustainably. That means you have to reduce the CO2 emissions, but you also have to increase efficiency, and you have to increase earnings, and you have to do all these three for it to be truly sustainable. And I think that's the inspiration. And then coming after that, we have had the ideas come from a lot of the people themselves that work here, my colleagues, and then they have the ideas, and then we have good helpers in the form of consultants, and especially also suppliers that then can put our ideas into life.
And another one here on packaging. We had Michael speaking earlier from the paper bottle company. Did you think there is a feasibility that we could also be using paper packaging for coffee at some point in the next decade?
In the old days, we used to use paper for quality, but the shelf life was really bad. Now we have a shelf with the bags that we have now. We have a shelf life of about 12 months, which is really good, because that means that we reduce food waste, and food waste, as we all know, is a really, really high contributor to the CO2 emissions. I'm not sure. I think we could use if we could use paper as a source to make polymers, perhaps. Mm-hmm. Or if we could use paper as like a carrier or a structural thing. But it's important that we that we going forward now that we also have the second life of the packaging material in mind.
Okay.
And I saw you had Huhtamaki on your speaking list. I don't know which wine of Huhtamaki it is, but I know that they are working with a lot of very exciting things when it comes to polymers and plastics, and also laminates that you can actually reuse and recycle, and not just reuse the energy from.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Bengt and Peter. That's been a great session. We're going to break for lunch now. Thank you again to all our speakers and all our audience for asking such great questions as well. We're going to reconvene, so we'll have just over an hour break for lunch, reconvening at 13:20, that's UK time, and I guess that'll be 14:20 European time. A big thank you, and we'll see you here in just over an hour. Thanks so much for these great presentations and all that amazing information. Good afternoon. Welcome, everyone. Welcome back to the Future of Greentech. I'm Jeffrey Young, and today's topic is sustainability in food and beverage. For those of you that have just joined the afternoon session, we had a great morning session. It was amazing, with already 4 incredible experts and a great audience. So thank you all again for being part of this. Just as a reminder, we have a Q&A box. We'd love you to ask as many questions as possible, make this as interactive and as fluid as we can to share ideas and all sort of work towards a better planet. I'm delighted to welcome our first speaker of the afternoon session. So it's Richard Ali, who's the VP of Public Affairs for Huhtamaki. Welcome, Richard.
Thanks very much, Jeffrey. Thank you very much. And it's a pleasure to be here this afternoon.
Great. Well, the floor is yours, and we're looking forward to hearing about how food packaging can contribute to sustainable food systems. Wonderful.
Now, let me, of course, do the first thing, which is the technical bit where we all sort of fail.
I've never been able to do that. Luckily, I've got some people here helping me out.
Okay. Hopefully, let me know when you can see the screen.
Start. Yes, we can see it. Great.
Okay. I will just put that on so it's slightly larger, and I'm hoping that's going to work. Let me try again. Of course, all these things work in practice. There we go.
Yay.
Hooray. Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, well, I will kick off. So firstly, my name is Richard Alley. I am the VP for Public Affairs for Huhtamaki. We are a Finnish-based company. We broadly serve food on the go and food on the shelf with our food packaging. So by food on the go, of course, we mean quick service restaurants, food delivery, and food on the shelf, FMCGs, retail. Our products cover everything from convenience through to food safety, food accessibility and food availability to food waste reduction. We have 3 technologies. The first one is paperboard, so paperboard conversion. So you can imagine things like paper cups, things like paper containers. We produce a range of products on from molded fiber, so things like the traditional egg box, which perhaps isn't so traditional anymore given the amount of innovation that's actually happening within that sector. And finally, we produce flexible packaging, some from paper, a paper-plastic combination, but also from a range of plastics themselves. We are as I said, we are a Finnish company, but we are located globally, including in the UK, where we have 5 sites. Our net sales are some 3.3 billion euro, and we employ over 18,000 people around the world. Our purpose is really very straightforward. We believe in protecting food, people, and the planet. And that's all about making sure that food is available and moves from farm to fork in an efficient and effective manner. Now, I think we all know that demand for food is increasing across the globe, but we also know that food systems have already had a huge impact on the environment and continue to have a huge impact on the environment. So by 2050, the world's population is expected to surpass 9 billion people. But still 135 million people now suffer from acute hunger. And by 2050, food production must itself be increased by about 70% to meet that demand. And today, some 25 to 30% of global greenhouse gas emissions come from the food system. And yet 1/3 of all food produced is either lost or wasted. And agriculture is one of the main users of the world's fresh water supply. In fact, 70% of the world's fresh water withdrawal is used to produce food. Packaging helps. It keeps food safe from spoilage, and it helps to preserve its original properties, whether that's safety or indeed whether it's something like taste. It delivers hygiene and safety and absolutely helps prevent the spread of disease. It ensures food is available globally, moving it from where food is produced to where food is demanded. And it allows that food to be transported affordably. And of course, it preserves food in that edible condition for much longer than otherwise. In fact, can you imagine, and the picture on the left-hand side here of your screen is a box from the Berlin airlift. Can you imagine how that would work without packaging? On the right-hand side is a modern city, miles away from where food is grown. Food distribution relies on packaging, whether it's in terms of crisis or whether it's every day. In fact, it wasn't so long ago that people said there is 10 days between empty shelves and anarchy, or maybe 3 meals between a full stomach and great social unrest. So the debate for us, we think it shouldn't be about more or less. It should be about smarter, better, and more sustainable packaging. Now, Huhtamaki has a 2030 sustainability strategy, and we have ambitions to drive those innovations through our product pipeline. On the left-hand side, you can see our sustainability ambitions. So by 2030, 100% of our products designed to be recyclable, compostable, or reusable. We will be using 100% renewable energy in our plants. And we have just had our carbon neutral production targets and our science-based emission targets approved. And we use those targets, those ambitions within our product pipeline to drive our products. You have to have you embed those characteristics within the product. So if I look here, we've got coffee, we've got a fiber lid, and we've got a fiber tray. Oops, sorry, I've gone too fast. Hoping that will now take me back. Oops, it does. Okay, at the top of the screen, you can see on coffee, this is a flexible packaging pouch, which is fully recyclable. We have what's called a blue loop platform in our flexible packaging processes. And we are designing to make sure that that soft plastic, which of course in the UK we've all heard much about, can be recycled. The second item there is a fiber lid produced from wood fiber coming from sustainably managed certified forests. And of course the aim there is to replace plastic lids with fully recyclable fiber lids. And at the bottom, you can see a product which is something we launched a couple of years ago. It is a wood fiber-based tray to replace black PET in ready meals. So it does all those things that black PET does, microwavable, etc. But it's fully recyclable and it is home compostable. And those things are all quite important, but it's all about making sure we take our sustainability ambitions and we translate them into products. But of course, to get there, we require innovation. And real innovation requires science, evidence, but also better regulation, because those together will help us deliver improvements and, very importantly, avoid unintended consequences. So what do I mean by all that? Well, the first one is life cycle thinking. Now that means thinking about all the impacts of legislation, all the impacts of science, all the impacts of infrastructure when you are designing a product and when you are bringing it to market. Better regulation. We think better regulation is absolutely crucial to developing innovative products. Better regulation means making sure you are legislating, that policymakers are legislating in ways that support innovation and enable innovation to take place. Some simplistic bans, of course, all that does is prevent innovation. It prevents incremental, not only just incremental innovation, it prevents transformative innovation. And the third one on this diagram is that we want to see systemic, systems-based approaches, that you assess the full system, including the use phase, when you are developing both policy, but also innovations. Let me give you some examples here. Recycling fiber, recycling paper-based products. What are we doing to achieve the road to circularity and sustainability? So we all know that the challenge, especially for food service packaging, is that rates are relatively low, yet the recycling rates for fiber as a whole are high. Across the EU, it's some 85%. Now, there are complexities, whether food service packaging is consumed out of the home or on the go, or whether it's home delivery. And of course, coated boards, so that's the paper board which has a very thin polymeric coating for food safety to actually hold liquid. Some standard paper mills don't want it, they don't accept it because they just want to have fully paper products within their plants for many reasons. There's the visible issue of litter, which none of us want to see on our streets or in our countryside. And of course, products can also be seen as contaminated for recycling because of course they can have food on there. So our areas of focus have been firstly on the go, looking at take back programs. How can we make sure that that product, which is often virgin fiber, is held and it is taken back and put back into recycling systems? We've been involved in a number of closed loop and event-based recovery and recycling programs, and also where things like paper cups or fiber-based packaging can also go together to go to the right plants for recycling. Design for recycling is really important in terms of that. How do we improve the recyclability of fiber-based packaging and achieve a wider acceptance in reprocessing? The UK, for example, all the paper cups that enter the market in the UK, plus many, many millions more, can be recycled in the UK now without any technical issues whatsoever. And of course, making sure that the utilization of material occurs in the best value products is important. So examples, the UK Paper Cup Recovery and Recycling Group helped set up a national cup scheme. It now has over 4,500 recycling points, over 180 million plus cups are recycled to date, and there is likely to be a move towards a mandatory requirement for take back, which will further increase the number of paper cups which are recycled. We're involved in something for Evergreen, which is a cross-industry platform at a European level, including the UK, to achieve better collaboration across the supply chain and really help drive R&D and deliver even higher rates of fibre recycling. In fact, it has a 90% fibre recycling ambition. And we're also involved in something called Holy Grail, which many of you may have heard of, which is really all about making sure that we have a product, a digital system that can help sort products and then send the products for recycling to the right plant. Huhtamaki's commitments. We want to take leadership in this area and reduce the environmental impacts of packaging while ensuring that the benefits of packaging stay with us. We're involved in running pilot projects, actually global pilot projects, and we're developing wider collaborations across the value chain. Ultimately, what we want to do is to develop sustainable and economically viable solutions and help drive that change that we all wish to see. Of course, high quality evidence is absolutely crucial to better regulation. Without it, there will be unintended consequences. But don't forget that that high quality evidence can also challenge some preconceptions. Now, I want to give you an example of that evidence, which is something that the European Paper Packaging Alliance has been involved in. There has been much talked about in terms of whether reusables are better than single use. And I would say the conception is they absolutely are, but that's not necessarily the case depending on where those reusables are used and depending on where the single use product is used. Now, EPA commissioned a company called Ramboll, which is a very large and highly respected independent environmental consultancy. The objective of this LCA was to compare in-store, so dine-in, use of single-use paper-based packaging and multi-use tableware in quick service restaurants across Europe, including the UK. The results were that there was actually significant environmental benefits for single-use systems in several important impact categories, including climate change and fresh water consumption. The study, it was commissioned by the industry, there's no doubt about that, but it was carried out independently by Ramboll to ISO standards, and it was independently certified by TÜV, a German certification company, in a third-party review process. It is also, by the way, being given to the European JRC, the Joint Research Centre, and the French Environmental Agency, ADEME, again, so they can have a look at these things. Now, I'm not going to go through the details myself. I thought at this point, as it's after lunch, and it's always difficult being the first after lunch speaker, I thought I'd just put up a very short couple of minute video with the results. And hopefully this will work.
I'm struggling with that video. I think it might not, something wrong with the bandwidth. One more little moment. Might be good to try it without the sound, Richard. Just see if you can try it without the sound, if you get a bit more. Okay. I think Richard was probably have to getting such bad quality here.
Jeffrey, I think we've had troubles with that, haven't we?
Yeah, I think it might be best to yeah, just kill the one. I mean, because you're not doing yourself justice there, because obviously there's a lot of good information there. Just I think the bandwidth for some reason must be the internet. I mean, I think there's some great points made. There's, you know, definitely there is a huge value of packaging to preserving our food and reducing food waste. Your point about you know, the actual contribution of food production to the carbon you know, problem is absolutely perfectly valid, and you know, food waste is an absolutely important thing. Likewise, the innovation, you know, you're going to, you know, to make a huge difference is, you know, is really appreciated and highly valued. So you know, thanks very much. I think we're gonna have to move on to our next speaker, and that is Safia Qureshi. Have I got the correction? Safia Qureshi is the founder and CEO of CLUBZERO, and Safia's going to be talking about reuse. So I think it's a, you know, a good debate, and there are lots of solutions out there. So I look forward to listening to Safia as well.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Jeremy. It's lovely to be here and excited to share I guess the other side of the coin. So welcome everybody. I'm Safia, as Jeremy was mentioning. I pioneered the use or the reuse movement in the consumer packaging space, and really been building out CLUBZERO from as early as 2015. So know way too much about packaging than I would like. And interestingly, I actually build buildings. I'm an architect, so I design infrastructure, I design all kinds of elements that go into the city. And so my personal interest is designing for well-being at city scale for the interests of people, planet, and governance. So I'm just going to take you all on a little bit of a journey, I guess, to explain what this huge crisis is around packaging itself. So fundamentally, single-use F&B packaging is a massive and growing problem, and current waste solutions do not work. The facts remain very, very, very clear. 1% of paper fiber cups are effectively recycled. 1%. So when people throw numbers at you, just ask them what percentage are actually recycled. And these are, you know, from independent. These are specific channels that will tell you repeatedly the same number. So if 1% of our packaging just across beverages alone, which is one of the highest polluters of our cities, is being recycled, we know fundamentally something very, very horribly is happening. And the main issue is it's deemed contaminated. Now, ironically, food and beverage packaging has food and beverage in it. Figure that. Now, if it has food and beverage in it and it still has residual food and beverage in it, it has no value to a recycler. If you add a contaminated, any kind of food and beverage packaging into a bin with other packaging and it's contaminated, that entire bin will be incinerated. So not only does your item, which might have food and beverage inside, contaminate itself, but if you mix that into a regular bin, that entire thing has no use. So, very interesting. Now let's move on to another interesting number. 2 of the most polluting items in our oceans are F&B packaging. Your bottles, you've seen and heard all about them. And I'm not going to list the brands that produce them, but I'm sure you have a general idea. The biodegradable space is a huge fundamental issue. Now, if you speak to any major recycler globally, and I would say California is probably the furthest along when it talks about compostables and it talks about biodegradable packaging. They've started that journey many, many years ago. What they will also tell you is that that stuff has completely destroyed its actual organic matter, which the farmers are finding massive pieces of packaging, which is meant to be composted and biodegradable. It's not, it's just sitting on farmland. That's a big problem. So suddenly you've got this concept that, oh, I'm buying into something that's compostable, biodegradable. It doesn't break. And it only actually contaminates our food supply, which ends up on farmlands as manure, organic material, and it's just sitting there. That's another problem. Then you've got roughly about 2 to 5% currently of, let's say, beverages sold in reusable packaging today. That's a very small number. So the sort of incumbent is your single-use packaging. So when you combine all of these things, you start to realize it doesn't matter what numbers people throw at you, the recycling infrastructure simply isn't effective, and it hasn't been for about 40 or 50 years. The demand is too great to catch up with it, and we're not able to sustain any form of recycling in any capacity to keep up with consumerism. So consumers, investors, governments are demanding change. And you know, this isn't something that's been just recently being talked about. This is something that is being talked about for years. It's now become a very consumer-faced problem. For about, I would say, 30 odd years, consumers weren't aware that they were consuming all of this packaging, and they were under this belief that it was all being recycled. Nonsense, absolute garbage. Now consumers have become very conscious, but what consumers do is that they put pressures on investors, and these are asset managers because climate change. They also put pressure on government, and they also put pressure on brands. And so consumers have the most power today, and they have the most knowledge today. And so these are the metrics that you're starting to see across the board. On the top, you've got 90% of millennials say they would switch brands for one which champions a cause, so more sustainable products. You've got asset managers, 78% of them now explicitly incorporate ESG into their investment criteria. And there are 60 countries that have introduced bans and levies. 60 countries globally that have introduced bans and levies to curb single-use plastic waste in the past 5 years. 60 countries in 5 years. Kind of tells you that everybody's waking up to the problem. And when I talk about plastic waste comes in many, many, many forms. It comes, as currently mentioned, inside a paper fiber cup. It comes on its own as rigid plastic, which might be recyclable. And it comes in all sorts of other types of coating. It comes in films, it comes in wraps, the whole lot. It's completely, utterly useless. It's all garbage, which is exactly what the issue is. So if we're moving to zero waste, here's the activity that you're starting to see. And this is no coincidence again. These are big, big numbers being thrown around. Nestle investing 1.7 billion to make 100% of its packaging recyclable, reusable. These are big numbers. There's a reason why brands are moving towards that. Again, 60 countries, 5 years. 180 million from Coke to build out more sustainable products. And you can understand their single-use bottle is a big issue. And distributing that in single use is a big problem. And then you have brands such as Burger King that have also committed to completely phasing out single-use packaging. So it's rocking the boat for a lot of single-use packaging manufacturers globally, because they're realizing the products that they produce, A, have nowhere to go, and B, the demand is too great, and C, brands don't want their silly products anymore. So we need a new model that doesn't just decrease waste, but can also handle the reality of increasing consumption. We are getting bigger as a population globally. You can't tell people to eat or drink less. That's just not effective. And so what we're doing at CLUBZERO is essentially designing a reusable food and beverage packaging system that replaces single-use packaging. Super simple in terms of how it works. What we've made sure is that the convenience for a customer is the same. You walk into any food or beverage restaurant, you get the option for reusable packaging to go. You swipe your app, the product gets associated on your account through the technology that we set up. You have about 7 days or 14 days, depending on what you take away, to return that packaging. That thing is then collected by us, brought back to a central wash depot, which we manage to ISO certification and standards. It's dried and packed and redistributed. Super straightforward. We also have a delivery model on top of this. So it's not just on the go. So if anybody here is well educated into how the Allegra Group Foundation have built the reuse models, there's either on the go, which means you walk into a cafe or a quick service restaurant, you take something, or it's at home, you get something delivered to you. So we have the same experience for customers when you order takeaway. And I assume that everybody in lockdown increased a lot of their food deliveries to the home, right? I mean, we were all stuck indoors for 18 months, getting exhausted in the idea of cooking every day. So that just increased our consumer waste in the home. So what we have done is we've set up the entire system to enable you to get reusable food containers instead of single-use packaging. And you can return that from home. So the interesting aspect here, when you want to understand the metrics now, you know, no reuse company, not all reuse companies are equal, I would say. Everyone has a slightly different model. We've pioneered the space and we're significantly further along than a lot of the others. And I guess we've had more time to really perfect it. So what's exciting is we have a 95% return rate of our packaging. So pretty significantly high, and that's across retail. It's 99% in offices, so that's business hosts. We have a 20% typical conversion, which means 1 in 5 people opt in for reusable packaging when they go into a food or beverage outlet. And our customer ratings are really high. So we, on average, about 8.4 out of 10. People love it. And there's a lot of, I guess, value in reuse. It's a much, much better product. You're not holding something that becomes garbage after 20 minutes. The experience is completely different. There's no comparison. So it's nice to hear how it's all going and what our customers say about us, because that's really ultimately what's the most important thing that drives our growth, is that we show value to all our partners. So Just Eat is one of our food delivery partners, Just Eat Takeaway. And we've so far learned a lot. There's a lot more to do. But what we're hearing back from customers is the experience is fantastic. Felt much, much more elevated in my food and beverage as I took it away. And the product experience was super straightforward. So our impact, I want to kind of share this. This is super important for us. We've saved over 1 million items of single-use plastics to date. For me, that number still needs to grow significantly, but that's our impact to date. We've done over 530,000 orders, and this is across London and Palo Alto. So we launched in West Coast as well in 2020, and we've saved over 15.2 trillion tons of CO2 in the process. How do we measure that? Well, we have essentially what we call a gold standard for reuse. So before we started the entire operations, we measured, and this is very much along the lines of how to measure for reuse. It really needs to be working with the likes of Ellen MacArthur Foundation, who are a foundation of the circular economy. Anyone who's not working with them, was a bit of a question mark on any kind of studies. So having won their award back in 2017, off the back of that, we actually worked with them to fully measure the reuse system. That includes where the product is made, where the material source comes from, and how it's shipped to where you distribute it, and then how it's washed, everything from salts used, water used, machines used, the specification of them, through to which vehicles you're using, so how you're distributing this to your host locations, and then through to how many use cycles you're optimizing for, or how many use cycles that product is designed for. And then you compare it with the equivalent number of the incumbent, which are your single-use cups and containers. We took specific branded ones from the market, but we didn't publish their names. And also we compared it to, I want to say biodegradable because they don't actually end up getting composted. So we also compared it to a couple of brands who designed those. And we also compared it to ceramics. We use half the amount of CO2 to the incumbent, 50% of the CO2. So when you look at reuse companies, you have to understand not just the embodied CO2, but the entire operational CO2. What a lot of the producers don't talk about is what happens to the product after it gets dumped somewhere. Well, it'll get moved and distributed many, many times, and it'll slowly find its way, maybe being baled by a recycler, being sold and shipped abroad and sent somewhere else. If it's lucky, it might actually be recycled in this country, but the recycling rates are pretty woefully low. And so when you look and compare across that data and you use external sustainability experts to do that, you realize if you keep the product literally in one small geographic location, which is London, and you spin it around many, many times, your entire operational CO2 is much, much lower than the entire recycling infrastructure, which deals with all of this. So we've actually published our LCA. We're market leading in it. We're the first ones to do it. We publish it, so it means that anyone can read it. It's available on our website. We've shared it with the United Nations. We've shared it with the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. We've shared it with Greenpeace, closed loop partners who we work very closely with. We take this matter very, very seriously. And it's partly to just raise awareness again, because completely, like myself being a consumer, totally lied to and misled for many, many years around what actually happens to products at the end of their life and the fact that they don't get recycled. So in terms of the costs, quite an interesting comparison when you look at what do reuse systems look like in comparison to commercially against single use. We're almost price comparative if you look at compostable packaging. So very attractive if you're buying any sort of single-use branded compostables. We're pretty much like to like. We've just launched in King's Cross. You might have heard and seen a lot of activity recently. It's been super exciting. And partnerships include all of these folks here. So King's Cross, First Mile, who does all of our distribution, London, who are on a mission to turn London into an exemplary city for circular economy, Camden Council, of course, and Just Eat, who help us on the delivery side. And these are the brands that we currently have worked with and working with. We would say these are some of the pioneers. Some of the biggest ones here are Starbucks and McDonald's. Our most recent university campus is UCL. So if anyone's visiting, do go check it out. As well as small independents. We're building a network of CLUBZERO locations across the city. It means that we're turning it into a zero waste destination. So super excited for you all to try it out. Thank you very much.
Great. Thanks very much, Safia. Very compelling and excellent presentation. So let's. I'm looking for some more questions from the floor. There, we've got one already, but I'll just see if we can get a few more. We want to make sure. I've got some questions waiting as well. I'm very excited, but I'd like to hear from our audience here. Because there's some controversy here, but it's also, we're all in here together to try and find the solutions. So let's go to our first question, which is Doug, who doesn't have a mic, so I'll read it out. Our local council won't accept molded fiber egg boxes in the recycle. This is for Richard. In the recycle bag, you did some explanations to explain fiber is treated to be waterproof, which the paper mills reject. They won't accept shredded paper either. Can you comment? Now that obviously we all have the best interest at heart here, but there are some big challenges. Richard.
Yeah, I mean, for a start, my local council accepts fiber egg boxes. So, and they are recycled because the way we produce molded fiber is from waste paper. That's the point of molded fiber. So Doug, maybe you can send me a message after and we'll find out which local council it is, but that's really very peculiar because egg boxes are recyclable.
Doug, you haven't got a mic, do you want to reply as to which council we need to get working on? Probably many, but yeah. Great. Well, Safia, I would like to pose a question to you while we're waiting for more from the floor. The idea of reusing, absolutely buy into it. It sounds fantastic, almost too good to be true. Challenge though around first of all the transport. Clearly back and forward. Is there any research that you've done? Is that different from, say, deliveries? Because I assume it's slightly more bulky than a single use and an out. And then I have a second question, but is transport a concern for you?
No, we use electric fleet for all of our distribution. We work with First Mile, so we bolt onto existing operational infrastructure. We don't send dedicated vehicles out.
Right.
So bolting onto existing infrastructure means that you use less carbon because you're not actually personally putting out new vehicles. You're using existing systems. The radius is M25. Everything that we do operationally is within the M25 zone. So we're very much a city by city play, very much on the same lines as most delivery systems like Uber or the most recent kind of 15-minute delivery systems who have dark stores. We have locations that are very much within cities. So where this doesn't work is regionally, because there's no point you moving something to Canterbury and then picking it up and bringing it back to London. So there is very much a a logic in which we designed and developed our life cycle assessment. And I can share that link in here, which combines all of this.
Great, that's excellent. Clearly there's, and just a follow-up question related to that, the actual carbon cost of actually producing something that is reusable, and hence, I mean, and you know, one challenge may be that it takes a lot of carbon to produce each cup, and water as well. So just.
Yeah, and so our products are used or reused 250 times.
Right.
Less embodied energy when you combine all of that to 250 of the equivalent in incumbents, which combines two types of materials, which makes them, you know, impossible to separate. So our products are mono materials, just one, polypropylene. And so building it and making it is a lot simpler. It's an injection molded process, and you're not combining multiple materials.
Okay. Right, we've got a question, another question here from the audience. All right, we have Kiko Fernandez.
Hi there. I just have a question for Sophia. I would like to know the process to start a new cluster in a city from a different country, like for example, Spain.
Jeffrey, you're on mute.
Now I'm on mute, right. For Safia, what would be the this is from Kiko Fernandez. What would be the process to start a new cluster in cities in other countries? So someone that's very interested.
Process to start another cluster in new cities. Well, we don't really talk about our strategic way of setting up. So, but in the sense that if you are a host, if you're a restaurant or cafe that's looking for a zero waste packaging system, yeah, get in touch with us. Happy to see and let you know what the next lineup is of cities as we expand. But it does require, you know, multifaceted approach. So you're basically acquiring lots of hosts, which we refer to as restaurants and cafes, as well as business hosts, and then you're acquiring lots of end users. So yeah, we're, you know, consumer brand. And it requires both of those aspects, kind of like a marketplace. You're on mute, Jeremy.
All right. Right. There was a really lovely quote in the, it's from P.A. Plambeck. Message to everyone. Congratulations to every presenter here today for some innovative ways in tackling our challenges. There is, however, the elephant is in the room that so much of our wastes finds its way into the countryside, into our shores, and the development of packaging must combine that challenge with people around us to recycle responsibility. Why don't I push this question to Richard? You know, is it the end consumer ultimately that is responsible for, you know, being, you know, more responsible with recycling?
I mean, I think there's a number of bits here, and obviously consumer behavior at the end of the day is something we all have to tackle. I think Safi is right. We need to make things as convenient as possible for people. On littering, there are a number of challenges, and in fact, Hubbub has done some really good behavioral research recently, which I'm not sure whether I think it's been published, but it was around the Bournemouth area in terms of how you encourage people to use bins. So there's plenty of work that needs to be done there. But I just want to come back on one of the, I suppose one of the points Safia was making is that we need to look at life cycle thinking on all of this. Unfortunately, my video didn't work. I'll send the link out so people can actually see it. Look, I don't disagree with Safia that the more you use a reusable, the less the carbon impact is of that reusable. That's absolutely the case. And I can only talk here about the area that the Ramboll study, because it's a proper LCA. And what they found was that 83% of the impact was not down to the cups, the tableware. It's down to the sanitization, which is absolutely necessary to prevent cross-contamination. Now, if you are able to recycle more, and I think they took 30% recycled for the paper tableware, which is from all the data, which is across Europe, is right, because much of that product just goes straight into the normal paper stream. It's not an issue. The challenge, I think, that was found from that is if you are looking at the full market, and of course the LCA was done on the full market rather than small regional markets or specific closed loops, then what you actually had was the impact, the potential impact of the carbon and the fresh water from the sanitization based on current energy characteristics was over 1 million petrol cars. It was over 750, a city of 750,000 people. So life cycle thinking means you have to look at the whole system. This isn't about picking and choosing. This is just saying, look, if you're going to put in place systems, if you start with the evidence on both sides, you can make better choices. And it's those making better choices, I think, which is the aim of certainly this event today, which is having the evidence to make the better choice and dealing with the littering at the end of the process. No one wants to see litter. Everyone wants to see it either put in bins and then treated correctly. And I'm not saying that necessarily means one over the other. What I'm saying is treated correctly. And littering is not treating correctly. It is antisocial behavior. And we need to encourage people not to litter. And there are various ways you can do that. But it is a huge point. It is an issue that we need to deal with.
Yeah, we have another another request from the audience here. Joe Ching, we're going to make you live now so you can answer your question.
Yeah, hi. Would like to ask, how does CLUBZERO ensure that the returnable system remains hygienic and sustainable for takeaway food services?
So the systems for sanitization, they've existed for like over 100 years, by the way. This is nothing new. And it's been in practice and implementation by the likes of major brands, Coca-Cola, bottlers, any PepsiCo, anyone who's doing any kind of returnable glass bottling, beer industry, anyone who's serving you restaurant quality food in ceramics or glass, all conform to specific ISO certification and standards. And they all have to maintain certain health and safety practices. And so that's exactly what we do. We conform to exactly that system. It's nothing new. This isn't a sort of a kind of a makeshift us with rubber gloves washing things. This is through industrial scale washing systems and with certified manufacturers that implement those. So we work with operators that do this day in, day out, essentially, and we work to ISO certifications.
Okay, so then does that mean that you will follow the systems that is set by the country? Because I come from another country, not UK, I'm from Singapore. So like I would like to find out more about like how can organization take in the system to help this business model. Yeah.
I'm going to take a good guess to assume that ISO certification is global, specifically also in Singapore.
Oh yes,
So
yes, definitely.
Yeah, so those are standards that, I mean, they're borderless. So you have those, but then you have health and safety requirements for every single country. US, the FDA imposes specific health and safety requirements, which we have to conform to when we're in the US. same with Canada, and every country has its own layer of whatever that looks like. So Singapore will have one that's specifically around maintaining health and safety standards for anything that's washed, whether you are a restaurant and you have a back of house washing system, whether you're doing that front of house in the under counter washing system, or whether you are in a warehousing facility that's off-site, that's also maintaining washing systems. They all have to conform to the same health and safety regulations and standards.
Understand. Thank you.
Great. Let's see if we have any more questions there. Right. Richard, I've got another question for you. What, I mean, with so much variance, you know, from, you know, obviously geography, but even down to between borough to borough, what you know, how does your organization go about sort of trying to ensure that there is more, I guess, recyclability, as much maximum recyclability in each location? Is that something that you, as an organization, try to work on, or is it's just too complex and it's too vast?
No, I don't think it is too complex. I mean, one of the problems that the waste management system has across Europe actually is it's old. Okay, it's not necessarily fit for purpose. It's old. We don't have harmonization within the UK. We certainly don't have harmonization within Europe. We don't have harmonization, and Safia lives in London. There is no harmonization in London. Okay, I live on the English-Welsh border, and I can walk a mile, and it is absolutely a different system. Okay, so but none of this is rocket science. All right, Safia mentioned earlier food contaminated recycling. Okay, recyclate. You deal with that. It is not an issue. The issue is the wastewater treatment to deal with the organics once that food is gone. The contamination can be dealt with. In fact, on paper product, the contamination can be dealt with, but does not fit the traditional model. The way we are trying to deal with it, and the way many others are trying to deal with it, is to through what's called the Forever Green cross-industry platform. It's actually to look at the evidence, to look at the technical requirement, and also to make some ambitious understanding of where we want to get to. None of this is, as I say, none of this is beyond the wit of man. But of course, pulling things together when you start off from a system which has been established for many, many years can be quite complicated, because there are different models. And if you move to some degree of standardization and simplification, you can then achieve a huge amount. I mean, the interesting thing, I think, in terms of the recycling industry is that, and I'll give some examples here. I look at the difference between some examples in Western Europe, where things have been there for quite a long time, and some of what's happening in Eastern Europe, where, yes, their waste management systems tend to be less efficient, but when they make the investment, they do a leapfrog jump. Okay, so you end up in a position of going, it's a bit like computer systems. You spend a lot on a computer system, but after a while, it becomes outdated, and you make the next leap forward when you make that next investment. Now, one of the things that we're very keen on ensuring is that extended producer responsibility, which is a tax on packaging, that those taxes are put not necessarily just to deliver operational funding, but they're there to deliver capital funding for new investment. Because if you're able to forward. But the important thing here, of course, is that we are material positive, especially on packaging. Packaging must be fit for purpose. It doesn't really matter whether, to me, it doesn't matter whether it's a piece of reusable packaging, as long as that is fit for purpose. And Safia exactly said it right. There are protocols in place, and the FDA has huge numbers of protocols to make sure that sanitization is achieved. But the point is, it's not just washing, as Safia knows, it's drying afterwards. And one of the challenges across the entire industry is making sure we have fit for purpose packaging, because without packaging, there would be more food loss and waste, and that is a real issue. WWF now put the amount of greenhouse gas emissions due to food waste at 10%. It's huge. We would have more problems on distribution. London would not get fed without packaging. Be in no doubt, London, without food packaging, London would starve. And this is a really straightforward piece of how do we make packaging and the packaging systems more sustainable. But packaging systems themselves also fall into a need that you have to understand where the materials are coming from. Are you using resins, maybe polypropylene, for example, which is an extremely good resin? Are you able to recycle that resin? Because there are items which are very hard to recycle because they are too thick. So our recycling systems rely on relatively thin plastic, not saying plastic films, but relatively thin plastic because it is easier to recycle. The big durable products are more difficult to recycle because they have to go through another process of granularization. So just because something is plastic, don't believe it's going to be recycled in exactly the same systems. So all this waste management process is extraordinarily complex, but again, it can all be solved and achieved, but it can only be solved and achieved by working together rather than sitting in silos, because that is frankly going to help no one.
Right, well, thank you. That was a brilliant session. A lot of food for thought, a lot of debate, but also some, coming out from two sides here. So, thank you. Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Safia. But that was a great session. We're now talking specifically about the topic of food waste. So I have a great pleasure. You'll have to excuse my pronunciation here, but I have Paschalis Lukiadis. Now, I'm sure, can you help us with this? Just see if she's on the line.
Hey, Jeffrey, no problem on the pronunciation. That's a common challenge with my name. So my name's Paz, makes everyone's life easier. And I'm Managing Director here at Too Good To Go, the food waste saving app. So food waste is our daily business. It's our passion, obsession. And yeah, looking forward to sharing some thoughts and a little bit of info with you all.
So that's Paz for Passion.
That's the one.
Excellent, go for it.
Awesome. I'll share a few slides just to help with kind of the conversation and make sure that it's all as clear as it possibly can be for you all. But first of all, just a huge thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today. I have a kind of background in retail and restaurants, actually in Camden as well. So my background and knowledge in the space is from the operator side as well as running the operation here for Too Good To Go in the UK. So I'm going to spend about 10 to 12 minutes just talking through the challenge of fighting food waste, giving you an insight into our approach, and hopefully that will generate some questions and also some discussion later after we've heard from the other great speakers that's on the lineup as well. So a short introduction. I said to you that my background is in restaurants and retail, and I've worked for some of the big retailers in the UK. I've worked at Tesco, I've worked in restaurants like Pizza Express. I set up my own in Camden, and it's been a wonderful journey, but a journey that highlighted to me just how much food is wasted, and how there are real opportunities for us to make a difference and to change the world. And in July of last year, I decided to dedicate the rest of my career to working on activities that will impact climate change. And luckily, the opportunity to run the UK team at Too Good To Go came along. So I've had a background and a kind of education in climate change, economics, policy and governance, but recently actually being able to take that to the level of working through it day in, day out. But today I'm going to focus on the big issue, and the big issue that I want to put forward to you, I'm sure there are many, but one that I really wanted to highlight is the issue of food waste. Fantastic that the previous speakers were so strongly aware of the details here, and I'm proud that that's happening, and that more and more people are aware of the challenge that food waste poses. And I think the stats that helped me get my head around food waste and why I work in a business that tries to eliminate one small part of the food waste trail, if you want to call it that, is that, as we said, 8 to 10% of greenhouse gas emissions come from food that is produced and wasted. It doesn't get into our bellies, it goes into other forms, mainly the bin. And I think one of the ways that I've been able to contextualize this, and I try to explain it to my children as well, is this concept of if food waste were a greenhouse gas emitter, it would be the 3rd largest country in the world. And that for me really does put it into context. So the concept of food waste puts the greenhouse gas equivalent of that production that is wasted just below the US and China in terms of scale. But it's not just an environmental impact. It isn't just about the greenhouse gas. There are social and economic impacts. And we all know the impact of coronavirus, the increase in the use of food banks, food insecurity has become an issue. We can solve that if we know how to reduce the food that is wasted. So there are social, there are economic, and the number that is currently being worked around, and in fact is about to be updated with some feedback from a recent study, is that $1.2 trillion every year are produced and then wasted, which is painful. So it's a big issue, but big issues are really hard, right? We don't know what we can do. They're always quite complicated. And I try to bring this down into some further context and then offer a solution. So the further context that I did want to give is that, every second of this conversation, 98 tons of food is wasted. And that is a very difficult thing to swallow, and we don't want to. The final commentary here in terms of setting the context of this conversation is that wasting food is actually not just a problem of wasting the material in the food. It's the land, the labor, the fertilizer, the water, the fuel, and all of the power and electricity specifically that it takes to generate, grow, transport, and distribute that food. So we were talking about packaging earlier, and that's really interesting to me because this is part of the story. So if we wasted less food, inevitably, in my head, you would waste less packaging as well, which is clearly a real passion point. So wasting food is wasting resources. And I always go back to what my grandmother used to say and how she would feel about food waste. And I think there was a certain reality check in that generation as to how food was regarded and the connection that we had with food. So the final bit of context here is just to understand how food is not just the material, the atoms, the carbon that's trapped within it, but also lots more. So throwing away one banana is waste enough water to take a shower for 10 minutes, as a little example. So I can convince people to eat brown bananas now when I try to give them that example, and gives them a sense of it. And then I talked about how this is a huge issue, and huge issues are worrying, and we don't quite know what to do. But if you needed any more motivation, Project Drawdown, which is a collection of climate scientists and experts globally, had a look at the things that we can act on. So this is not just pie in the sky stuff that we'd like to do or we need to innovate to deliver, but they looked at what are the things that you can do today to change the direction we are going in terms of the climate warming up and staying below the 2-degree increase. And their conclusion was that the #1 solution, because it is both attainable and makes a big difference, is to reduce food waste. So if anyone asks you what you can do tomorrow, then Project Drawdown's view, and my view of course as well from using that science, is that it's around reducing food waste. There are 1,000 ways to do it. We offer one of those 1,000 ways. I thought it would make sense for me to give you a couple of points on what Too Good To Go is, more for inspiration than anything else. And I'll do that right now. So I'll give you a sense of how Too Good To Go works. We work starting with a vision, and the vision we have is a planet with no food waste. And what does that really mean? That means that in the long run, our app, our enabler, isn't just about the food that we can save, the Costa or Greggs or Nero bags that you can pick up of food that would otherwise go in the bin, but is wonderful, tasty sustenance for us. It's around enabling the whole planet to be food waste free. We are a social impact company, so we are a business. We are not apologetic about the fact that we are a business. That's how we get funded and how we can grow. But our app makes it easy to do one small thing. And that one small thing that we ask our customers to do is to save food that will go in the bin and take it home and enjoy it. And that is, in essence, the core of what we do. We also have a whole team, both here in the UK and based out in mainland Europe, that work on policy and how we can influence food policy to reduce the amount of food that is wasted. So I don't know how many of you have the app. If you don't, of course, I would recommend you pick it up. There's no fees or anything like that. It's just interesting to see. But our app allows us to connect customers, people like you and me, with businesses that have food that otherwise would have been thrown away and would have gone into landfill or would have gone into other routes to be repurposed. And what that means is that it's bellies, not bins. It's a smart model because it allows us to return some value to the business that has invested in the food, and it allows us to prevent that waste from happening to the planet. So there is an economic benefit, a social benefit, and of course an environmental benefit to it too. This is the end of the detail on Too Good To Go, but I did want to give you a sense of what the scale is and why we think we are taking a chunk out of the food waste mountain. The app is the largest in the world. We're in 17 countries. We have 30 million users, and we save a lot of food from going in the bin. And in the UK, very specifically, we've grown a lot over the last few years, and I'm very excited that we have plans to continue growing. The final thing here on us, and then I really will give an opportunity for some conversation, is the way that we make this work. And the thing that I was attracted to when I took the reins of the UK team is that we don't specify what you'll get, because by the nature of being an ex-operator, my view was, how in heaven's name do I know what I'll be left with at the end of the day? I know I need to display to sell. I know that as a retailer or a restaurateur, if I don't display product, I can't sell it. I also know that I'm trying really hard to minimize the amount of waste that I have. Those two things are sometimes in conflict. And a rainy day, a rainy Tuesday, where I thought it would have been a bright sunny one, will inevitably end up with there being some waste. And what we are is the safety net. So our magic bag concept means we don't specify what the customer is going to pick up. We have people who want to save the planet, who want to be waste warriors on our app, and they are very happy to enjoy magic bags from many of our partners. And I kind of give you a sense of the kind of partners that we have on board at the moment. So people like Costa, Planet Organic, Cafe Nero, Morrison's, and more. More joining every day. But these are the kind of businesses that our customers are happy to save food waste with. And I think that's really an exciting place to be. It's a really easy thing. It takes a few minutes of your day. It's good value for money, and you're doing something good for the planet. So this simple kind of tech solution to one of the world's big problems is what we're all about at Too Good To Go. The sum up from my side is just this concept of, you know, individual actions are small. That 1 or 2 button press that you have on your phone to save a magic bag from going in the bin is a small action, and it's a relatively exciting one, and maybe even one that you can enjoy with your friends and family. But it's an individual action, and those small individual actions do add up to making a very big difference. In the UK, we've just broken the 7 million meals saved mark, so we can now put ourselves on the map in terms of what that means from a CO2 perspective, but also from a social perspective. And globally, the number keeps on racking up, so a very exciting place to be. Look, I promised that I'd talk a bit, but also make sure that there's lots of time for questions, and I can see there might be a couple of things in the chat there. So I will stop talking and maybe leave it open now for you, Jeffrey, to moderate.
Great. Well, I've got just one question here. Just if I'm an operator, can you walk me through the process of how do I sign up my food service business, and what do I actually physically have to do? And yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. So fortunately, it's a very simple process. You can go onto our website, and there is a form there that you can fill in, and my will call up and take you through the process. Luckily, there is no commitment required, so there's no financial commitment. All that we would require for an operator to do is to explain to us that they are a food business, either have an FSA rating or are registered as a business that can handle food. That's part of our safety controls. Once that's established, then the operator can download our app and access their own store that we will set up for them and say, hey, I generally have 1 or 2 bags worth of waste at the end of the day. A bag is defined by value. So I'll give you a little example. We work with Greggs, a brilliant business. We're in almost 2,000 of their stores, and they really partner with us as their safety net for any wonderful sausage rolls that might be left at the end of the day. One of the Greggs magic bags is £2.50 for the consumer, and the value, the retail value, the RRP value of that bag is £9. So £9 worth of Greggs products go into the bag. The customer pays £2.50 for them, and then there is a commercial agreement between us and Greggs as to what happens with that £2.50. But there is never a cost to the operator in using Too Good To Go. There is only a return of products that would otherwise go into the bin, and we're very specific about that. We don't want to get in the way of donations to charity. We don't want to get in the way of making choices that reduce food waste. What we do want to do is be the safe, and there is enough value in the safety net for us to grow, but also for our operators to put back and invest in their business. So really it starts with going onto the website, toogoodtogo.co.uk, signing up. We will call you, set up your, what we call My Store, and then from day 2, we can be saving food waste together. It works. We have 11,500 partners in the UK, and there's no kind of financial commitment. It comes, it really does come from the transactions that we actually operate together.
Absolutely. Sounds absolutely magical. Oh, sounds, now I am muted. Hold on. You are muted, it says. My screen's, can you hear me, guys?
We can.
Oh, good. Okay. It was flashing across, I'm on mute, but I'm not on mute. So, right. That sounds absolutely amazing. Just to confirm, small operators, individual operators, all fine to go?
Absolutely. In fact, our business was founded on independence. So our founders were sitting in a buffet restaurant, a one operator buffet restaurant, and were perplexed at how much food was being thrown away. And so on that basis, they said, hey, let's develop a quick app. So we have, of the 11,500, we have about 5,500 independent operators, and the rest are kind of businesses of 10 or more stores.
Right. In today's world where localness really does count, yeah, that sounds really incredible. And obviously you're getting the benefit of the big brands as well. So We're going to move straight on to our penultimate speaker session now. It's Kim West and Oliver Burek from Mura Technology. We're going to talk about recycling the almost unrecyclable. Let's switch and welcome, guys.
Thank you very much. Just to check you can hear me. Great stuff. I'm going to just share my screen. Bear with me one moment.
And we'll have our panel discussion just after this.
And can you see my screen?
Yes.
Marvellous. Lovely. Well, thank you very much, Jeffrey, for the introduction there. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Kim West and I'm from Mura Technology. And today we're going to be highlighting the role that advanced recycling can play in the circularity of plastic, in particular packaging, entering it into a circular economy with our process Hydro-PRS, which will aim to reduce waste plastic pollution, carbon emissions into the atmosphere, and of course, waste plastic. So without further ado, so as we have seen throughout countless media stories, television coverage, etc., there is a huge problem with plastic pollution and plastic waste. Specifically within the UK, there's 2.4 million tonnes of plastic packaging being placed into the UK market every year. And 60% of that 2.4 million tonnes comes from within the consumer industry, so plastic packaging, household goods, etc. However, whilst the UK recycling rate sits at 44%, a large majority of that comes from actually commercial and industrial waste. So whilst the majority share of plastic placed onto the market is from household sources, the actual recycled content or the recycled material is coming from a different industry. And household recycling, really the majority of products that are being recycled mechanically are PET containers, so drinks bottles and milk bottles. They make up 60% roughly of recycled materials from household sources, whereas flexible films such as the kind of material you might buy frozen food in, or maybe food wraps, that kind of thing, those flexible multi-layered materials aren't actually able to be processed via mechanical recycling. So there's huge quantities of this flexible material going to waste, going to disposal. And of course, that also takes a lot of plastic waste out of the UK as well, with a lot of waste being exported, mainly now that China has introduced national sword and Malaysia has started to close its borders as well. A lot of that waste is now being transferred to Turkey for reprocessing. And there's not always viable recycling options in some of these countries. So a lot of it is going to waste, to landfill and to incineration as well. And you can see just from the graph on the right-hand side there, if we look at data from 2001 in terms of the amount of plastic that's being recycled within the UK versus export, you can see that the majority of it is being recycled, reprocessed within the UK. But around about 2004, 2005, we start to see a shift in that the majority of waste, plastic waste, is being exported to other countries. And the latest data from 2018 shows almost double the amount of plastic being exported overseas as opposed to being processed within the UK. Now, alongside the problems with plastic waste and waste plastic polluting the environment, there's of course the associated CO2 emissions that come with plastic manufacture and plastic production, and its incineration as well. So we can see here from a global point of view, there's 390 million tonnes of CO2 being produced every year from the plastics industry. And that's set to increase to 2.75 billion tonnes by 2050 if the market stays as it is. And that includes emissions from incineration as well. Now, within the UK, in terms of plastic recycling or plastic disposal, incineration actually remains the primary destination for most waste plastic. In other countries such as the US, landfill, I think about 70% of plastic waste is landfills, but within the UK, the majority goes to incineration. And you can just see at the bottom there a little sort of comparison that if you're burning a ton of coal, it's emitting 1.9 tons of CO2. But if you're burning a ton of plastic via energy from waste, which is incineration, it's almost it is over 1.5 times more CO2 than burning a ton of coal. And you can see on the graph on the right there, the upward curve towards CO2 emissions from manufacture and incineration of plastic. Now, what we're aiming to do is to actually replace fossil feedstock in the manufacture of plastic with recycled feedstock. There's been many questions raised about whether it would be viable to replace plastic in packaging with alternative materials. And there have been studies looking into the carbon footprint of doing that. One of which by Imperial College London highlighted that if we were to replace all plastic bottles with glass, it would increase CO2 emissions 4.5 times. And if we were to replace all plastic packaging across the US and EU, it's 116 million tons of CO2 in addition. So really, yes, what we're aiming to do is to replace fossil feedstock in the manufacture of plastic with recycled hydrocarbons. And by doing that, we aim to reduce the CO2 emissions that come from plastic, that come from fossil extract. Also decouple plastic manufacturing from fossil, divert plastic away from incineration, and we're keeping that carbon and circularity as well, which also, of course, then reduces plastic waste and reduces pollution of the environment. So just an overview, a quick at a glance of who Mura are and what we're doing. So we have developed a new process called HydroPRS. And this process is able to convert end-of-life plastics, so waste plastics that can't be mechanically recycled, back into fossil replacement hydrocarbons. It's an alternative, a low-carbon alternative to incineration for that waste material. Now, what we're not trying to do is take material away from mechanical recycling. We're looking to take the waste material that can't be recycled mechanically, the residues, the real gnarly, dirty stuff that can't be reprocessed, that maybe has multiple layers or is flexible. It's a scalable solution, and that's due to the key process that we use. I'll go into that shortly. And we're undergoing LCA as well, some specific LCAs that are indicating a significantly reduced global warming potential of our process when compared to incineration. We have our first site under construction at the moment in Teesside in the northeast of England, which is close to where I am now. And we have an additional 8 sites under development across the US and Germany as well. So to dive into the technology a little bit more, so HydroPRS is hydrothermal plastic recycling system. The hydro, as you can guess, means that we use water within our process. So we're quite different to traditional pyrolysis in the sense that we use water, supercritical water, and we cut the carbon bonds within the plastic and we donate hydrogen and convert it back into fossil replacement products. They can then be sold back into the petrochemical industry for the manufacture of new plastics. Because of our use of supercritical water and because of the nature of the process, we're able to recycle a much wider scope of plastics. So where there has been limitations with mechanical recycling, we're able to open the scope up to flexible materials, multi-layered rigid materials, and post-consumer as well. So anything that's contaminated with food residue or organic residues, we don't need to separate out waste streams. We can just take it all and convert it. There's no separation needed at our sites. And as mentioned previously, it is designed to be a complementary process to sit alongside mechanical recycling. We're not wanting to compete. We're not wanting to take waste away from mechanical. It is just to scoop up and process the materials that otherwise would go to incineration. Now, because of our use of supercritical water, there are a number of key advantages with what we're doing. So the best way to describe it, scalability is one of our key advantages. The way to kind of describe this is if you were to, sort of a basic analogy, if you were to imagine a cooking pot or a cooking vessel, and you were heating something within that cooking pot from maybe one flame at the bottom of the pot, the product within that pot is going to heat and it's going to change at different points as the heat works its way up. Now, because we're surrounding the product with supercritical water, there's a much more even conversion. It's all heating at the same time, it's all converting at the same time. So we offer, that means it's a really easy to scale up process, whether we're looking at sort of pilot trial or going up to our sort of 100,000 ton sites.
Can I just ask a really silly question? Because, you know, what is supercritical water?
Supercritical water, now I'm certainly not a chemist, but it's water that's under its increased temperature and pressure, basically. Okay. So it operates as both a gas and a liquid. It exhibits properties of both. Fantastic, thank you. No problem.
I was not going to follow the plot if I didn't understand that. Thank you.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So yes, so it, as mentioned, it opens up the plastic scope. So we're recycling all major types of plastic, and it's insensitive to contamination from food product, organic residue that they actually run through the process, come off at the other end as a process gas, which we use to refuel the supercritical boiler. And because of the supercritical water that we're using, because it's a much more stable and even process, we're also getting really high product yields as well. So to run you very briefly through the process, we're taking, as mentioned, mixed waste plastics, so no need to segregate those waste streams, they're contaminated. Our first site is under development within the UK, so we have this front-end sorting facility there. That's where we shred the plastic, we prepare it ready to go through the process. It's melted and pressurized and mixed with the supercritical steam, and that's where it goes into the hydro PRS reactor. Now, it's actually only in there for about 20 to 25 minutes. It's a really quick conversion process to convert mixed waste plastics into hydrocarbon products. It's then depressurized and flashed off through a distillation column, and that results in our 4 major saleable products, which again we can tailor towards the industry. If we look at our key target feedstocks, so the majority of the plastic that we run through is polyolefin, so PE and PP. We can also process PET and PS as well, and some levels of PVC, although it's not as often found within post-consumer plastics. But we're taking plastics that are coming from municipal waste, agricultural sources, and material recovery sources as well, and also looking to take plastic waste away from incinerators as well. So anything that can't be run through mechanical recycling processes. And I think a key point as well here is to highlight that in particular when we're looking at plastic packaging, is that our process allows brand owners and consumer companies to actually avoid having to redesign their packaging, because we are able to process a much higher scope of different types of plastic. If they're having trouble finding an option to recycle, then they'd be able to run it through the hydro PRS process. And that again avoids redesign and avoids having to waste plastic. And the 4 main products that we produce from the end-of-life plastic that goes through, 3 of those are key ingredients in the manufacture of new materials. So naphtha, distillate gas oil and heavy gas oil are all used in the manufacture of plastics. We're creating recycled versions, fossil replacement versions, and also heavy wax residue as well, which is a real sticky tar-like product. That's a little bit like a bitumen type product. So that's where all the rubbish from plastic goes into. You might have colours, additives, chalks, etc. That all falls into this real heavy bottom product, and that can be used in the manufacture of roads. It's a low carbon road bitumen product. We are developing the technology, or rolling the technology out globally. As I mentioned earlier, we have our first site is actually under development or under construction within the UK up at Teesside. On completion, it'll be 80,000 tonnes of plastic waste that we are processing, although we are building it in phases. So the first 20,000 tonne line is being built at the moment. And on completion, it should be operational, we're hoping, by the back end of next year. We also have 4 sites under development in Germany, 4 in the US, of a slightly higher capacity of 100,000 tonnes. And we have also partnered with KBR as well, who are an engineering partner with us, who are also our licensed partner as well. So they are able to communicate our technology, our process to a wider global clientele. And that's resulted in actually selling a license to our technology to Mitsubishi Chemicals, who are going to be developing their own site in Japan. So the global rollout is certainly picking up steam. This is just a quick overview of how the Teesside project will look. As you can see here, the big grey building on the left-hand side, because the waste management industry is perhaps not as developed in the UK in terms of segregation and curbside collection, we need to do quite a bit of sorting at the front end. So we're within this building, that's where we're shredding the plastic and preparing it for the conversion. The tower you can sort of see in the middle, that's where the magic happens. That's where the plastic is converted into hydrocarbons. It takes only around 20 to 25 minutes. And then, as you can see at the far right there, the products are then separated and stored and then shipped to our petrochemical partners. And just a brief slide to finish. Now, we discussed earlier on about the situation with CO2 emissions from the plastic industry, and how the majority of plastic within the UK is destined towards incineration, which is emitting about 3 tonnes of CO2 per tonne of plastic burned. Now, we are undergoing a life cycle assessment with WMG, and our early data is looking really, really positive. Although the full report won't be available until more towards the end of this year, we're seeing some really great reductions in CO2 emissions from our process versus incineration. So that 3 tonne from incineration, we're getting much closer to being able to remove that. And also, when we compare our hydrocarbon products to fossil, to virgin products, we're also producing at a much lower GWP as well, which will only increase, it'll only get better as access to renewable energy becomes available to us. So we're partaking in a number of other LCAs with the European Commission, Consumer Goods Forum, Chemical Recycling Europe and Sphere as well. So that is the end of the short presentation, and I will, welcome back to you, Jeffrey, for questions. My colleague Oliver Borick, our Chief Commercial Officer, is joining as well for the for questions.
Great. Well, Kim, that was fantastic. So innovative. And now I know what supercritical water is as well. Welcome Paz back onto the panel. Let's check for the questions from the audience. Now, please don't be shy. It's been an absolutely great day. We had some great questions. We've got one, Jeff. That's the previous one. So no current questions. We're getting a shy audience right at the end. We're having lots of compliments from all the speakers. I've got a question for you, Kim. Now, this seems like absolute magic, really, and it's in a sense that is this the ultimate, in a sense that it prevents the consumers for having to do all the hard work and sorting. I see how hard it is, just to even understand within my own borough, what you can put into the recycling bin, how, I mean, is this the start of something, or is this just an alternative means to one solution?
I mean, the comment around one solution, we sit within a group of other what's called advanced recyclers. So there are other technologies out there, and we certainly work as a partnership within that group. And again, we're not looking to replace mechanical recycling. We're looking to work alongside it, and we kind of see ourselves as a suite of solutions. But that being said, we certainly think that our process has a number of advantages. The use of the supercritical water makes it really scalable, So we're able to roll it out in a much much higher capacity, and seeing some really great product yields coming from it as well. In terms of the consumer, and there will always need to be a level of segregation at MRF, at Material Recovery Facility end, because we're not looking to take plastic bottles. Plastic bottles are very readily recycled through mechanical processes. So we're not looking to take that. We want to take all of the rubbish that otherwise will just sort of go up the chimney, will be incinerated. So yeah, I mean, what we would love to see in the future is a collection process for films and flexibles, because they're not collected by quite a number, certainly within the UK, quite a number of local authorities. So if I think there's a paper that was released called One Bin to Rule Them All, which we found really quite useful within the team, which highlights that ideally consumers would be able to put all of their plastic waste within the one bin that's collected, segregated into mechanical recycling feedstock, and then the rest of plastic feedstock would come to processes like ours. So we would love to see it as simple as possible for consumers, but we're certainly going to be available at scale to capture the waste that otherwise would go to incineration.
Maybe I can add something to that. So it is always helpful if the consumer segregates material, because if it is all commingled, you need a lot of energy to separate it out later again. So any help that the consumer can provide to the industry and to these solutions are always welcome, because in doing so, that's another facet of this, the consumer's help and assistance in this regard will materially lower the carbon footprint of the whole process. So we're not looking to sort of make the consumer lazy and let them off the hook. I think we would like to work together with the consumer, so if they can help us, we can be more energy efficient, and then everybody wins.
Great point, and thank you for that, Oliver. Just also related, the issue of contamination. Does your product deal at all with slightly contaminated products?
It does, absolutely, yes. So as I mentioned in the presentation, a key feedstock for us is post-consumer plastics. So they will more than likely be contaminated with food residue, other organic residues. So when material is coming through to us, as you can imagine, when waste is collected, it does get contaminated with other things like glass, grit, stones. Our front-end sorting facilities on each site will remove that, but such as the organic contaminants, they do pass readily through the process. They pop out at the other side as a processed gas, and we do actually recycle that gas, we reuse it within the system.
Fantastic.
So there's no sort of need for an intensive pre-cleaning of the material.
Right, now we had a question there for Paz. It was, do you have a solution for coffee ground waste?
It's a great question. I mean, just reflecting, interestingly, Kim and Oliver, I think what is similar, but obviously you are an amazing scientific and technical solution. We are, at the end of the day, an app. But I think what's interesting is we're catching the parts of the supply chain waste that otherwise would not be caught. So great question around coffee grounds, and on the coffee grounds piece, I've been asked it a couple of times. We don't currently. So our thinking at the moment and the current iteration of our app is that we only utilize or save products that can go into people's tummies again. So it's bins to bellies. However, there's no reason why we can't become an app that allows businesses that need coffee grounds to pick them up. As a byproduct of very busy coffee shops, there's lots of coffee grounds, and we know there are businesses out there that need them, and therefore wouldn't it be great if we could act as on the same basis? So watch this space.
Sounds very exciting for a business like ours that loves to work in the coffee industry as well, in the Allegra Group. We will watch this space very, very carefully. Excellent. I've got a couple of comments there. That was Matteo saying thank you for that question, for that answer on the coffee. We've got one from Victoria, and we'll let her into the question. It's for Paz. You still on the line, Victoria? Otherwise, I can read out the question. Okay.
Hello. Sorry, am I unmuted?
No,
Yes.
we can hear you.
Brilliant. Our restaurant, we use Too Good To Go, and we have done for quite a while. But one thing we found it actually really useful for is that it's made us more aware of our waste, where we're having it, what days, what specific foods. And it's been able to help us cut down on that waste. But in turn, that means that we're using Too Good To Go less, so we've got less magic bags, which is the overall outcome that you're wanting from Too Good To Go. But I was just wondering, does that have an impact on the app? Because I'm sure other restaurants are finding the same thing.
So yeah, absolutely. So this is the interesting and maybe exciting part of my job. The reason I shared that idea that we dream of a planet with no food waste is why it's okay that this is the case. And our view is that if we can inspire and empower people to reduce food waste, that's the win. So recently we're working with one of our big partners, and we've reduced the amount we save with them by about 25%. And that's because the team recognized where the waste was coming from, because they had to put it in magic bags and not into the bin. So we're really happy with that as a result. Sounds crazy, but we are really happy with that. There's so much to save that there is a very viable business plan to be the safety net and inspire people to reduce the amount that they produce to reduce the waste.
Have absolutely amazing. Yeah, imagine to do yourself out of a job.
Yeah, that's the plan, right?
I would love to do myself out of a job, but not happening yet. But no, I enjoy too much what I do. But there's Sonia who would love to have us email. We'll forward that forward. Any further questions from the audience? It's been an amazing day. Do any of our panelists here have any kind of comments that you would like to kind of make some closing remarks yourselves of what you've what you've been thinking and some of the reflections on the day? Kim.
I was just
yeah, you've done a great job.
I mean, there's nothing truly specific, but I was perhaps thinking maybe that we could have a discussion with Pat afterwards about if you've got food waste or what happens with that plastic packaging, that if it doesn't get collected, if it doesn't get sold in the bags, if it does truly end up going to waste, if there's a discussion we could have there around recouping that plastic packaging, but if the food is packaged. But yeah, no, it's been a great day, a great session.
Thanks. Yeah, I think both of you have a sort of mutual sort of magic solution for things that are falling through the cracks. Paz, do you want to just a couple of final words there?
Sure. I'm just very I'm sort of so pleased that we're at the stage now where at all levels, whether it's at councils, whether it's national, food waste and the way that tech can be involved in solving the food waste issue is really gaining momentum. I think, we want absolutely to be able to save the planet from warming up. We think that these are viable solutions. We think technology and science is the route. We need some help from local and national government, but I'm just really pleased that we can be on these calls and share the story.
Wonderful, thanks. Now, I'm going to just summarize right at the very end, but I'd like to now introduce you all to Georgina, who heads up Camden Clean Air. She's doing a wonderful job. Yeah, I mean, a round of applause, virtual round of applause for Georgina, but I will hand over to Georgina right now. unmute myself.
Okay.
I unmute myself. Can you mute yourself?
Yeah.
Yep, use my. You need to remove your sound.
Right, let's try again. How's that? Is that if I Kim or
that works? Yes, excellent.
That's better.
Excellent.
Okay. 1 second. Let's just. Okay, that should be that.
How about you take mine?
Yeah,
Why don't you
sure.
take my simple solution? I'm going to hand over my PC here to Georgina.
There you go. Take mine, Jeff. There you go. We nearly went the whole way without a technical difficulty. Okay, is that better? I think that should be absolutely fine now. So yes, so the Camden Clean Air Initiative, so we have a number of borough-wide projects that we run. We are currently installing a network of air quality sensors right here in the borough of Camden in partnership with Air Labs. It's going to be the densest network in the world, which is really, really exciting right here in Camden. We are designing a parklet prototype in partnership with Camden Council. So that will be going in hopefully over the next few months and will lead to actually some policy change within Camden, which is brilliant. Parklets is something we've wanted to bring about for a very long time. We've recently completed a case study in a local primary school that was all about the impact of cleaning products and chemical products on indoor air quality. And with the results of that, we are looking to now launch an indoor air quality campaign around the borough with all of the different schools in the community. We provide information to the council on EV demands and charging infrastructure demands among the taxi driving community to actually try and prioritise those communities and those jobs that are driving a lot more than most and driving the most miles in a day, and who actually would benefit the most from increased electric vehicle infrastructure. We run numerous events, so not just not just the Future of Greentech. We do the Camden Clean Air Cycle. We are hopefully going to start doing some more in-person events and real-life events. We have the Camden Eco Champion Awards as well. That's all about celebrating the great work of people in our community, those eco champions within the borough. And finally, we are also working with secondary schools alongside their STEAM project to actually provide the equipment for students to build portable air quality sensors themselves, which they can then use to collect air quality data and actually work on that sort of citizen science program and how we can engage students with that whole process. So lots of different projects happening. We've got, as I said, loads of busy with the community on the ground, working with schools, working with households, but also trying to work on that big picture borough-wide projects and actually make some impactful change. I would like to as well show you a quick video that I might have to have another little swap around in a minute, that's all about our podcast series Racing Green. The reason I'd like to do that is all about the businesses and the individuals, the people accelerating green change. So we cover some really fascinating, innovative, cutting edge topics. We look at green tech. Some of the topics that have been mentioned here today are included. So I think it's something that you would probably all find really interesting. And I'm going to share a video if I can in 1 second. Yeah.
Welcome to Racing Green, the podcast that explores the ideas, innovations, and influences making waves in the journey towards a sustainable future for our planet. Join us as we investigate the new challenges, ingenious solutions, and the undiscovered opportunities that lie at the heart of our rapidly changing world. We aim to accelerate a new era founded on optimism and impactful collective responsibility.
When the CO2 rises in a room to 1,000 parts per million, that is the equivalent for your cognitive performance of having 2 pints of beer.
Formula E is now the first sport that can announce that it's net zero since inception.
There are areas that need to green, and the right solution for that is hydrogen. So it absolutely needs to be part of the story.
Sorry, I'm on mute. Late in the day, isn't it? Yeah, no, just a big thank you to Georgina and the team at Camden Clean Air for everything they're doing, not only local impact, but also putting together a lot of global content, which is really making us all think and learning and sharing information for creating a better planet. Big thank you to all our speakers today. It's been an exciting day. There's been a lot of really interesting material. Started with Julian from Coca-Cola, the immense scale of the challenge that they have as an organization. We then moved to Michael at Paboco, this innovative, paper bottles, as a future solution. Professor Peter Pickle, incredible precision in the agriculture with John Deere. And then the vision from Bent Hadgen at Joh Johannson in Norway, the most sustainable coffee roastery in Norway. Richard Ali at Huhtamaki, talking about the complexities, but also the value of packaging in reducing food waste. Safia Qureshi, who from CLUBZERO, gave us a really, really compelling argument as to the reality of and the dangers of single use, or that and how we can combat that in sort of local scenarios. And of course, Paz at Too Good To Go, and Kim and Oliver, amazing. I can't thank you all for all the great work and all the great knowledge that you've shared here today. Yeah, thank you very much. So I will just, conclude and looking forward to our next Camden Clean Air Future of Greentech event, which will be early in the new year, and it will be on the wonderful topic of clean air, as expected. Thanks all.